Green. Do you like the color green? Because it's the day of green. Happy birthday to Larry Winwood, or as I call him, Larry Winwood. Everyone sing him the happy birthday song? Because this is another birthday ranking special, one that, unlike the Bigfoot one, I actually wanted to do. So yeah, Scooby-Doo, it is one of Larry's favorite franchises, and by one of and favorite, I mean it's a franchise he likes a normal amount, and not any more than anyone else. I don't know why I'm doing this, but hopefully he still likes it. True to form, I think the biggest mystery to this video would be, who out there doesn't know what a Scooby-Dooby-Doo is? This franchise has existed since the late 60s and remained at the very least somewhat culturally relevant at the worst of times. For better or worse. But did you know it has 48 movies? I surely didn't. Let's rank all of them. The 4 animated television films, the 2 live-action television films, the 3 theatrical films, and the 39 direct-to-video films. So in terms of Scooby and Dooby, I have seen a lot of episodes, but I don't think I've ever actually sat down and watched any of them front to back as much as catching them sporadically. I like the cast, I like the franchise, I've only ever seen a few of these movies before now. So this is primarily a first viewing ranking. Let's see how they go. I don't think I need to explain what counts as a Scooby-Doo movie, I hope we can just jump straight into it. Scooby-Dooby-Doo.
Oh, there was a time when zombies were respected.
Return to Zombie Island is an affront to the art of filmmaking. It's an 80-minute long insult to the original Zombie Island, and furthermore to the franchise as a whole. Here's what I liked about it. The animation is sometimes nice. And now on to the bad. Holy fuck did they butcher the Scooby Gang in this movie, and for once that even includes Shaggy and Scooby. The entire first 40 minutes of this film revolves around Shaggy and Scooby being the biggest assholes who force their friends to stop pursuing their passions because they don't like it. Mind you, I'm not even blaming them for being upset about being sent out as bait all the time. No, I just think they could easily not be along with them when they go mystery searching. But no, they have to drag their friends down and say, we don't want to be in it anymore, so you can't either. But at least I can understand them being annoyed until they get to the island, and suddenly they're hovering around the other 3 at all times, getting snappy and upset whenever they even start to think about mysteries, down to when they try to figure out why they nearly crash into a falling tree that seems to be a fake tree. Later, when those 2 are assaulted by what they think are zombies, it leaves the other 3 predictably going, well gang, we gotta keep our promises to Shaggy and Scooby and ignore everything like the most oblivious morons ever put to film. Idiots, even if there weren't any zombies around, 2 of your friends just got physically assaulted. Why are you so uncaring? They even try to do some stupid fucking shit where the characters can't figure out small talk without mysteries to solve. Like if there's no mystery solving, they can't figure out what to say. Newsflash, morons! Most of the classic movies begin with them doing something else or getting wrapped into a mystery. They are a group of best friends who sometimes solve mysteries, not a group of mystery solvers that are sometimes friendly with each other. Oh, and there's a special place in hell for Velma, and for Velma in this movie too. This movie is well into the worst of Velma's characterization. The era of full skeptic Velma who doesn't even consider the possibilities of non-explainable things. Or I guess worse than that, she actively vocalizes it at every turn. It's like the movie thinks you watching are the dumbest motherfucker and need to have Velma mention in every scene how she doesn't believe shit and couldn't accept the lack of explanation for the original Zombie Island. Oh, it's so infuriating. I understand how some people think that skeptic Velma makes sense. That's fine, but the way they write her doesn't make her come off as someone who is just skeptical. It comes off as someone who chooses to deny reality and what they have experienced and does not consider all possibilities, because considering all possibilities would be to consider things beyond her knowledge. And let's talk about continuity for a moment. Now normally it's not necessarily important, except this movie is directly a sequel to the original Zombie Island, and it follows on from the events of Curse of the 13th Ghost, which itself is a sequel to the 13 Ghosts of Scooby-Doo. Yes, the Scooby-Doo timeline and chronology has always been somewhat playfully stupid, but it can easily be explained away with the concept of just, oh, there's a contradiction, it's probably just a different continuity. Most movies and shows just don't acknowledge one another, but then this one comes in and fucks it all up. Now the gang are aging backwards, while others like Flim Flam grow up fully. And there have been 2 first times the characters have encountered the supernatural now, and in both sequels, those moments got retconned away. They retconned the entirety of the first Zombie Island, both to have a really dogshit mundane explanation that makes no sense, and to destroy the heart and soul of the original film. Not to mention that after the 40-minute mark, it suddenly becomes a story about, filming a movie and then it switches back to other shit. There's this insufferable director character who puts the product and profit over the lives of other people, films the gang without their consent, and they don't mind it, reminding me of fucking Brat's passion for fashion diamonds of all things. And worst of all, he gets away with the treasure in the end to become super rich and have a happy ending. But worst of it all is how this movie butchers the original point of Zombie Island. Without getting too into it, Zombie Island is the story of the gang growing up. They enter and exit the movie as different people. They learn to pursue their mystery hunting passion because being adults now shouldn't force them to no longer do what they love. They assumed that because they had grown up that it was past the time. No more time for this mystery solving, we've got to be real adults now. If anything, it was analogous of the fans and their passion for Scooby-Doo. We grew up with the gang, watching Scooby-Doo and loving it, loving these silly mysteries and explanations. As we grow up, we start thinking we're too mature for it anymore. We drift apart from the series and think of it as just that silly kids show we watched. The original Zombie Island then came around, not just to introduce a new generation of kids to the franchise, but also to reconnect us older fans with that childhood and remind us, yes, it is childish, but being an adult doesn't mean you can't enjoy what you love, even if it's childish. The gang learned to go back to what they love with mystery solving, their passion. This movie makes fans go back to what they love with Scooby-Doo, to remind you what you enjoyed as a kid is not something to be ashamed about, and you can still enjoy it today. But importantly, the gang have grown up, just like you. They have stayed with you. They remind you not to be ashamed of whatever childish things you enjoy, but also that's because you're an adult. You don't have to go relive being a child. You don't need to go be a child to enjoy childish things. You can be an adult and enjoy childish things. That's what makes them actually having grown up and become mature kind of amazing about the film, the way it kind of works that messaging in. Return to Zombie Island guts that very concept. The gang are not young adults struggling to find their place in the world or move on to different things. They're no longer a bunch of friends who feel like they're missing something because they left behind their passions to their past. And no, I don't mean like, oh, this takes place afterwards, they should be exactly as they were at the start of the film. No. I mean this film retcons what they were. They were no longer young adults. They are no longer, like in that film, a bunch of friends who are missing something. No, in that movie now, it has been retconned. They were teenagers all along. They didn't change when they encountered the supernatural and learned that there's always more mysteries. They didn't learn that there are some things they can only tackle now that they're grown up. You know, the reason it's so great that they encountered real supernatural things is that they learned that in mystery solving, there are mysteries that you can only tackle when you're an adult. And that's why it's okay to keep with what you love as you move forward, because there are new things that will come along in things that you enjoyed as a child that you can only tackle as an adult. No. That's not the case anymore. That's not the message anymore. That's not it at all. The experience did nothing to them. Shaggy and Scooby saw it as just another scary day. Fred and Daphne's reality TV show was just a student project that they could get rid of immediately. It was not a job taking them back to their roots. It was just something they were doing at the time. It was a fad. And Velma, she did not need to grow beyond her knowledge to start considering the truly unexplainable. She remained a skeptic to all of it the whole time. The growth of the characters was completely undone. Return to Zombie Island doesn't tell you that you should grow up without letting go of what you love. It tells you not to grow up at all. It wants you to stay in the past. Look, it's the thing you remember. Its meaning meant nothing. The growth was nothing. Stay in the past, don't move on. As the world goes around you, stay where you are and let nostalgia and reminders of what was be all you need. I hate Return to Zombie Island with a passion. It might not objectively be the worst Scooby-Doo film, but it is by far my least favorite and an affront to everything that makes me find the franchise special.
But all the kids at the orphanage call me Dick.
Well, children can be cruel.
You know what I said about Return to Zombie Island and how it's like super nostalgia culture? Yes, Scoob is even more steeped in that nostalgia culture. It has to be one of the most pathetic attempts at kickstarting a cinematic universe I've ever seen. It makes the Mummy look... you know what, actually, I'll get back to you on that. Scoob is objectively not a Scooby-Doo movie. Oh, it's about Scooby-Doo the character, and it does feature characters reminiscent of the gang within its runtime visually, but this movie has no mystery, it barely uses those characters, and it primarily revolves around Blue Falcon and Dick Dastardly from entirely different franchises. And if you're fans of them, good news, this is not the same Blue Falcon, and this character is barely Dick Dastardly. Okay, let's take all that context away though. How is the movie as a movie? If you pretend this was a completely original film, and all these characters are invented for this movie, how is it as a movie? It's nothing. I feel nothing. It's painfully unfunny with its attempts to play into meme culture. It does it in a modern day way that dates it more than movies from the 90s. Its story is kind of just there and exists to get us from point reference to point cameo. Fred, Daphne, and Velma are barely in the movie. They're in the opening, they're there present at the end, and I think they get kidnapped at one point. They barely feel like they matter or contribute. Shaggy and Scooby, meanwhile, are also there and have a terrible third act breakup and a fucking fake out death. Blue Falcon almost has an arc, but it feels super unbaked. And Dick Dastardly is by far the most entertaining character in the movie, whom I was mostly rooting for just because all he wanted was his dog back. The animation is sometimes nice, but it also reminds me of Dream's Mask. This is especially with fucking Fred. I mean, young Fred looks like what all 3D Gen AI models trained off of in the year after this movie. Then there's the voice acting. Oh my god, it's so bad. Dastardly is well performed, and that's about it. Obviously, Frank Welker kills it as Scooby-Doo as usual, and I think he by far is the best performance, especially in trying to sell the dog water fake-out death. But then Fred, Daphne, and Shaggy sound like bad impersonations of their characters, and Velma sounds nothing like Velma. I'm sure I could do a better fucking Velma. Jinkies, Shaggy, stop being a scaredy cat. The real criminal was Jeff Bezos the whole time. Speaking of which, the double reveal on Dick was like the only funny joke of the movie, and it would have been way funnier if Simon Cowell didn't appear earlier. Imagine if there was no Simon Cowell at the start, and he only appears in this. It would have been completely nonsensical, but it would have been really funny. Anyway, this movie not only ends up feeding into all the worst parts about modern day cinema, with nostalgia culture, attempts to speedrun cinematic universes, and replacing all of an established cast with celebrities without informing that established cast, but it brings it all together into the most nothing finished project maybe of all time. And also, as a lifelong Transformers fan, I mean, I just take Frank Welker being in the movie, but not being made to reprise Fred or Dynamite for the first time. Kinda personally, you don't disrespect our maniacal leader like that. I fucking hate Curse of the 13th Ghost. This film does nothing right beyond it looks nice. I like the update to Flim Flam to make him less of a stereotype and more tolerable. Vincent Van Gogh's cool to see back, I do like him. But holy shit, I think this is atrocious both as its own movie and as a sequel to 13th Ghost. Let's start on its own. This movie fucking hates Fred. I know this era loved to take the lovable dork with a heart of gold and make him uncharacterably useless at everything, but this takes it to a new extreme. This movie seems to think that to fix the issue of Daphne being a bit useless in the original show, they should utterly destroy Fred, and have him have a whole bit about, gee, I'm sorry Daphne, I never noticed before that you were the real leader with all the skills I have, but more Daphne, you're perfect Daphne. This is not empowering women, this is tearing down men and then leaving women like at the same level to try and say that, oh yeah, we fixed the problem. That's not how that works. In the span of the first few minutes of the movie, Fred loses his van, he gets a joke made about how Daphne has a better van, and that continues as the movie goes along. He gets made a joke of for not knowing how to drive stick, so Daphne takes over. They make a joke about how he doesn't know how to use Scooby Snacks to motivate Shaggy and Scooby apparently. We get the line, like, I don't need it, Fred, explain to me. And then we finally get the scene of Fred coming back as leader, and instead of him being a leader, they undercut it with a joke about him being a cheerleader, and how he's super embarrassed about being a cheerleader. Why? Why was he embarrassed? This is Fred! Was this take on Fred trying to portray his older self as a toxically masculine dude who never realized that Daphne was good at stuff and was too insecure to talk about his feminine interests? Cause newsflash, dickhead, Fred is like the least toxically masculine character maybe ever. He is extremely open about who he is in every regard. I don't buy this story. Like, let me be honest, in character Fred, if for some reason he randomly became a big cheerleading fan, would admit he's going to cheerleading camp excitedly. He would dance in front of everyone without shame and smile proudly about it. If he felt embarrassed, it would be after he's already playfully and happily gone, guess what gang, I'm going to cheerleading practice. And they'd be like zoinks Freddy, I didn't think you'd do that. And then Fred would be like, why not? It's fun. You know how much effort it takes to be a real cheerleader? It takes a lot of strength in your body. That's who he is. He wouldn't fucking hide that shit. Fuck you. This also only serves to push Daphne as the real leader, which doesn't make sense to me. When did she get all these leading skills? Her being useless was a thing that got let go of at the start of the 2000s. She has evolved by this point. She is the most socially conscious, best talker of the group, who is the only one able to easily form connections with most people, and she is also the best fighter of the team. She is the most athletic. She is already a jack of all trades. She is genuinely one of the most capable members of the team. Why do they also need to tear Fred down to say that she's also the best leader and the best general thinker? It's not even because this is a 13th Ghost sequel. It's not like she takes the lead due to her experience taking on the Ghost. She's just like this now. And it's worse because Scooby and Shaggy are the exact same as ever. You'd be forgiven if you never knew they were tied to the original show past the intro where it's mentioned. Velma then, despite this to my knowledge supposedly taking place after the Zombie Island era but before the retcons from Return, is a massive skeptic who does nothing but go on and on about how real ghosts don't exist. Despite the fact that pretty much any time the ghosts are people in suits, she doesn't act like this. When it's actual ghosts, she acts like a massive skeptic. When it's people in suits, she's like, jinkies and all that. It's so not Velma to go out of her way and at every turn walk up and be like, ghosts aren't real, you fucking idiot morons, and be a huge bitch to her best friends. I don't think any of the crew got out well here. Shaggy and Scooby are untouched, but I think that's actually a real problem when you consider this as a sequel. None of the practicality and growth they showed in that series is here. They talk about how Scooby was uber traumatized by the show, as if one of the episodes isn't all about Scooby realizing he needs to do this and coming back after he initially abandoned the role. Which, mind you, makes them having forgotten about this and just left it all alone all the more egregious. There's a whole episode of that show about how Scooby can't just let it go. Why couldn't they write it so they tried their best but they could never find the 13th ghost, and Van Gool told them to just get on with their lives while he tries to find it? I can't blame the movie for, say, not having the same self-aware tone and humor of the show, that's fine. But this is not a sequel. Vincent doesn't show any powers, the 13th ghost is a guy in a suit all along. Velma explains the events of the series as mass hysteria, which is rubbish. I'm glad they leave it a bit vague as to if she's right or not, but I wish they didn't make her so this about it. This doesn't resolve anything. This barely has a 13th ghost. It's a terrible movie and a worse sequel. The whole time I was annoyed by the characterizations. The jokes weren't funny, the chases weren't good. Oh, and Scrappy isn't here, and they go out of their way to shit on him too, because we're stuck in the 90s. I hate this movie. I can't believe it has defenders. The whole plot begins because they get something wrong, they get chewed out about it, and their immediate response to one failure is to retire. Even Daphne seems to realize at the end that was fucking dumb.
Now this is a story all about how...
This is just not a Scooby-Doo movie. Scooby-Doo and Arabian Nights is basically just two random, unrelated stories of which are Aladdin, which is not part of the original 1001 Nights, and Sinbad, which is also not part of the original 1001 Nights. These segments both suck. Sinbad is boring and dumb, and Discount Aladdin's is just a poor man's discount bargain bin Disney Aladdin. The only twist is that the boy and girl are in a role reversal. There's nothing interesting or entertaining going on, it just sucks. It also sucks that this is technically a crossover of 2/3 of Scooby-Doo, Yogi Bear, and Magilla Gorilla, except they never actually interact with one another. The latter two only appear in stories, and Shaggy is the one telling the story. Why is he telling this story? Because this extremely white-looking caliphate has no glasses and is extremely attracted to Shaggy, so Shaggy essentially attempts to tell him stories until he sleeps, while unintentionally seducing him. You know, he looks like a child to me, and even calls himself very young. Shaggy, All this because Shaggy, decided with Scooby to become a royal food tester. 10 minutes before it happened, I sent a message to Biff saying, I wonder whether the movie would really shock me by having him and Scooby fail at the job because they eat all the food instead of just eating a little to ensure it's not poison because they don't understand their job. Lo and behold, the movie's bad. It's just bad. There's barely any Scooby and Shaggy, there's no Daphne, Velma, or Fred, there's two really boring stories involving Yogurt Bear and Salmonella Gorilla, and the animation is rough. It genuinely has probably the worst animation in this whole lineup. I mean, aside from the one that has no animation at all. It's ugly looking, awkwardly moving, and cheap. I can see why this movie nearly tanked the whole franchise.
Aloha, Johnny.
So of all of the Scooby Gang Goes to a Different Country movies up to Aloha Scooby-Doo, they haven't felt particularly culturally egregious to me. Australia and Wales were represented, I'd say, serviceably well, and Mexico I don't remember falling into too many of the cultural stereotypes. Aloha Scooby-Doo does all the Hawaiian cliches, from the tiki monsters to everyone going about surfing to the fire spinning thing. These I think are fine, they're just general shorthand we associate with Hawaii. What I draw more issue with is the whole movie taking place on the made-up Hanahuna Island for the Hanahuna Kahuna competition, wherein everyone is scared of the mainlanders entering the tradition and being attacked by the Wiki Tiki spirit. Oh dear. They make the meddling kids line to be a native being mad at the mainlanders for being mainlanders. Shaggy and Scooby are rewarded for their cultural appropriation. Everyone talks about how their ancestors would sacrifice people in the volcano to the Wiki Tiki. This is not a good look. I wouldn't call it like actively racist, it's just a little culturally insensitive as one might expect from the times, and I'd maybe be able to overlook it if I liked more of the movie. But unfortunately, aside from the Scooby Bang, being like fun as usual, and often some really nice animation, especially during the surfing scenes, I didn't find much in this movie. The villain is not only fairly obvious, but kind of lacking the menace and threat I picture from your standard Scooby-Doo antagonist, and I felt the mystery was pretty weak because of how little I cared. Like, the culprit is the guy that disappears for half of the movie after being attacked off-screen. That's real suspicious. And his girlfriend that he's totally worried about just isn't around. The plot ends up being motivated by wanting to get some new land. How unique. And it's insane to me that they make a big focus on how the guy seemingly needs money. His operation would have cost a fortune, and, normally I can ignore that, Suspension of disbelief, how did they set up all these mechanical bullshits, whatever, they just did, fine. But don't do that and then have the guy's entire motivation be, I need money. Maybe you shouldn't have spent $10,000 on this operation to make money. His entire thing involves an army of robots, surely he could make money off of that, just rob some banks with them if you wanted to do the evil route. I just don't vibe with Aloha Scooby-Doo, even ignoring the cultural weirdness. I think the villain's really bad and really flat. Most of the movie's in service of a mystery that doesn't pan out well, but I am glad that the office water cooler got to have a lead role animating the 3D Tiki monsters. You know what I think Wacky Races really needed and was missing? 45 minutes of absolutely nothing happening before the race itself starts. Reluctant Werewolf has its moments, like I am fond of the car growing a random giant teeth from nowhere. Growing a random giant teeth, what did I write? And there's some fun bits in the race, but most of this film is subpar animation and minimal interesting wackiness. I don't think this is very interesting, and at a certain point I wonder what the purpose of making this a Scooby-Doo film is. There's no mystery, there's almost no chases, there's nothing going on to actually make use of the character's unique characteristics. I was bored, it's not funny enough for me to forgive it for being dull. The Humpers, or whatever they're called, were only sometimes funny. Dracula is pretty annoying the more jokes he makes, and the other races have no personality going on. That's probably what really fails the film. The wacky races are all distinct and memorable characters. These guys are just, look, it's Frankenstein in a car. On the upside, I found the crowd funny. Something about how little they gave a shit not only was amusing, but I thought Dracula was at his funniest when he was trying to get them to react. I don't know how to feel about Googie because personally I fail to accept Shaggy having a girlfriend. To me, Shaggy is the guy who uses the bodies of the many bitches who throw themselves at his feet as a bridge to reach the cookies on the top shelf. It almost feels like this just wasn't supposed to be a Scooby-Doo film. I mean, Scrappy isn't really doing any Scrappy shit, and Scooby just sits next to Shaggy and sometimes has a dumb line. I was bored, it was dull, and I want at some point for a Scooby-Doo movie to feature anything other than Shaggy and Scooby going to a place, meeting a supernatural, and then just leaving. The film also immediately retcons or otherwise sets itself in a different canon to the last one, because this does not work with Ghoul School's events. Mask of the Blue Falcon may be the movie to give me the least. Just like in general, the least. I get nothing from this movie as a movie or as a crossover because I don't really care that much about Dynamite. The movie is just a bunch of nothing. The mystery's pretty weak and they couldn't be heavier handed with the red herrings. Velma was really bad in this one. I can accept her not liking superheroes, but she is really harsh in her wording towards Scooby and Shaggy for being comic fans, at least by Velma standards. Like, she normally plays a very big sister role towards the two of them in most films. Here she's kind of a jerk and seems to admonish them for liking comic books. Combine this with Daphne having basically nothing to do and Fred also having basically nothing to do, and you get a ho-hum Shaggy Scooby story that horribly underuses the idea of the mystery being one that plays to their strength and knowledge. It's actually really interesting to have a mystery that plays into specifically the knowledge that Scooby and Shaggy have. That doesn't happen often in these movies, and they do nothing with it. The Blue Falcon himself is not very interesting, and honestly, part of the film being themed around a gritty reboot feels like a waste. Like, it has this bit about how the company is burying the original show and making fans unable to watch it easily, which feels something like Warner Brothers has no legs to stand on, except they don't really condemn the practice itself. They instead make out the people who complain about it as weird and causing problems, such as the villain being primarily motivated by the original Blue Falcon actor being upset at his show ending in the upcoming reboot. It does feel in line with Warner Brothers to be okay with gritty reboots and saying that if you complain about it, you're weird and dumb, and you should be okay with us burying the original show, but it's also a bit tone deaf as to why people don't like them. I did not care for this movie, we can move on.
Just my luck. I've got a talking dog and I can't understand a word he says.
So, confession, I kind of like Scooby-Doo The Mystery Begins, which took me by surprise. Scooby-Doo Curse of the Lake Monster then also surprised me by being the cheaply poorly written slop that I thought the first one would be. There are three sides to the dice that is this movie. There's a really annoying Shaggy and Velma romance that amounts to Shaggy stumbling over himself for most of the movie and then acting as if he's liked Velma for a long time and it wasn't a spontaneous thing at the start of the movie. They have no chemistry. The other side is Fred and Daphne, who I appreciate them going past the point of the will they won't they that several movies have used in the past. I just wish them starting as a couple was actually like a real thing and not just a setup for them to complain at one another about the casualness of it and their inability to communicate. I think this is actually fine in theory, but it's not very well done. It's a bit less annoying than Shaggy and Velma's, but it also had better potential in my mind, and thus it gets less focus and that makes it more annoying. And then the last side of the movie is the mystery. One that the movie gives away immediately by having Velma be absent in the reveal shot at the start of the film that teases the big reveal. And yes, Velma was the monster because of bullshit. She's becoming like a witch frog thing? Fuck, it's very badly handled and rather pathetic. It's a very bad mystery accompanied by two awful fucking romances. What else does the movie have then? I mean, it has a handful of fun moments. Fred punches this piece of wood like he's Captain America. Oh, Scooby-Doo, he's a character. Yeah, he's barely in this movie. It's an issue I have with the previous entry in this duology, but it's way worse here. His main thing about being jealous of Velma getting Shaggy's attention is, I don't like it. This is a dumb movie. And with all of this bad writing, that means it doesn't have anything to keep my attention away from the cheapness of it. Yeah, the first movie was really cheap, but I could overlook that because I liked how it was written. This doesn't do that. They do the DMC Don't wig moment with Fred, but he likes the wig, so actually it's based here.
Second thoughts, let's not go to Camelot. It is a silly place.
The Sword and the Scoob is a deeply frustrating movie. On one hand, I wish it was a real, fun time travel story with the gang. On the other hand, I probably would have hated that. Let's start with the positives. It looks nice, but this era of Scooby-Doo does, so like that's nothing. King Arthur with the context of his reveal is very fun at points. I love his line about how he has a great resort in the UK and is inviting the gang to stay at the hotel next door to it. Or Merlin's bit about knowing who Barney Rubble is, and when questioned because that's a show from the future, he angrily shouts, "So Barney's a caveman, of course he knows about him," implying potentially that the Flintstones is based on a true story in this continuity. But unfortunately, God, there's a lot I don't like. Again, I hate this era of Velma's writing. She's gone beyond being absurdly skeptical of everything to a point of constantly going on about it so the dumb baby audience can understand. Now she's not just demeaning her friends for believing stuff, she gets told about the culture and legends of this land, and her response is to go, please, obviously it's not real and from a dumb era of dumb people who didn't know anything. Jinkies, your ancestors are fucking stupid. You dumb piece of shit. Velma should have enough basic human skills to know that demeaning an entire land's history and culture is just a shitty thing to do. I know she's a white American, but come on! She has that know-it-all act the whole way, and this is really, like, fucking annoying, because it's like, she has this thing of like, oh, I only watch this fantasy show because the actor is hot, because they can't write Velma like a real person who, maybe, will watch an unrealistic show because she enjoys them. They can't write her to be a normal person. Daphne then brings her own problems. You see, the movie is revealed to all be fake, not really a time travel story, and I have plenty of issues with this, namely that it's kind of an obvious reveal. Like, this is an era where nothing is really magical, so obviously it would be fake, and everyone with a brain could understand the only way this reveal could work is if everyone was in on it. Ergo, it's an obvious reveal that takes away from the believability of shit. But the only way to fix that would make this a real time travel story. But if this was a real time travel story, I have to believe Daphne being so good that she can defeat the entirety of the Knights of the Round Table on her own with ease, taking no damage. Which would be so ridiculous that it would make it hard for me to buy anything being a threat to her. It would be a ridiculous overcorrection of her dogshit origins to try and make her the ultimate unstoppable fighter lady instead of just a realistically competent martial artist. And no, it wouldn't be better if Fred did it, or if they did it together. Them accomplishing this with literally no trouble only works because they're actors, but the characters being actors only works because of a reveal that I think is lame and makes the movie worse. So it's like a Schrodinger's ass burger, and we still got more ass to talk about. This movie has a villain and a non-villain who have the same goal of gaslighting the gang into making Shaggy sign over his real estate. But the guy who isn't the villain gets a pass for the gaslighting, and they're okay with that because, oh, and Merlin is for some reason real. Now, if we ignore for a second that this is a continuity where Batman Brave and the Bold is canon, and this Merlin's just not the same, maybe one of them's Merlin and one of them's Mirrodin, it's so dumb that none of the actors ever question his incredible powers or his presence that doesn't fit the script they were given. Like, what? If he only ever interacted with Velma, it would be fine. Like, I even find their relationship kinda charming. But he is there for all to see in a few points. Imagine if you were doing a big acting job, and suddenly out of nowhere someone shows up and creates a storm that you've never seen before. It's not in the script. God, this is a frustrating movie. All it has going for it is a few funny lines. I just did not enjoy this one, and an actual Scooby-Doo time travel would rock. Maybe there's an episode in one of the wackier shows. No, I don't count 13 Ghosts version.
I think I just queen shit myself!
Okay. I know there are a few movies in this video I describe as the most uninteresting, but Daphne and Velma is the most uninteresting Scooby-Doo movie. In fact, calling it that might not be accurate. He's in neither the title nor movie. Akin to making a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles film, but the only characters are April and Donatello. Every other element of the franchise is just absent. In that regard, there is something of a novelty, but this is far from the most underdeveloped relationship among the group. A solo Fred and Shaggy movie probably would have been the only one where the bond between the characters is actually underdeveloped. Or I guess Fred and Scooby, but that would just be Frank Walker talking to himself the whole time. Anyway, so Daphne and Velma probably feels the most like it has no style to it. It has this incredibly milquetoast, safe, random bullshit tech high school setting. There's some kind of tiering system, there's bullshit technology everywhere. It's just kind of there. I didn't care for Daphne or Velma here. Daphne's arc of learning to do stuff herself not only once again skirts in the same territory of storyline she's had for the last 2 decades, but Velma is so boring in this movie. Not Scoob levels of boring for sure, but she has like almost no interesting moments to me. Thankfully though, I can say that the actual friendship between Daphne and Velma is very charming, so the scenes that is about them together, I think work. I think the core of this film is fine, and I think if anyone actually like really enjoys this movie, it's probably because of them, and I could actually understand that. What really gets me though is I just don't care about the mystery. All the top kids get zombified by a spooky door, which feels like a really underwhelming Scooby-Doo concept. There's no chases, there's no fun. The most exciting thing in this film is the awful action sequence against robot spiders. It ends with the reveal that the barely seen Elon Musk light is the villain, followed by the reveal that he's a hologram. It's actually this girl who is secretly a girl the whole time. I don't know, it's a stupid reveal to a stupid mystery with stupid sci-fi technology that makes this feel like a dumb teen Disney Channel film. It looks and feels cheap, despite not being the cheapest live-action film, I think. I don't really know what to say. I thought this was super boring. Oh, but isn't it just so empowering to see the girls of the team solve a problem without the boys? Look, if that makes you feel empowered, then I'm happy for you. I just want to let you know though, for the last several years, we have been in a Velma solves everything herself world, where she trivializes the rest of the team in multiple films. And Daphne has consistently been the most physically capable member of the group since 2002, while constantly being propped up as the best member of the team at anything that isn't Velma's territory or eating. These are the 2 most capable members of the Scooby Gang. Them solving a whole mystery solo is really nothing new. It would have been more novel to see Fred and Shaggy actually just solving a mystery themselves, because that's something you'd never see, while Daphne and Velma doing it is kinda just expected. And I'm annoyed they clearly wanted to do a girl power message, but they lacked the guts to actually make them gay. Come on, where's the snogging scene, guys? I would have put this movie at least 3 spots up if they had a proper snog. Where's the spit swapping? Come on! Okay, let's get out of the way. Scooby-Doo and the Monster of Mexico has the shittest Chupacabra depiction ever. I know that the goat sucker is a creature that frankly has no single primary depiction in pop culture. But between mangy dog-like creature and reptilian vampire fish, never have I seen Bigfoot. Fucking lame and shit, I'll be real with you. Beyond that, this movie takes forever to go anywhere. The monsters and moments just barely appear for a large portion of the movie, and is there enough to the movie to make up for that? Kind of. The gang are always fun to watch, at least a little bit, even if they're written a bit flatter than usual. The gang just bumming around Mexico is fun, and the side characters are enjoyable. But it feels like most of the drama just isn't good enough to make up for how much I don't care about what's going on. There's some real estate drama, and fucked if I could give a shit. And then there's a fake ghost which immediately gives up the game to the characters. Frederick presses the singular giant red button that always existed on the end of this necklace, under the logic of, it's a tracker, I wonder if it can go the other way, gang. And of course, like all trackers, you press the one singular button, and it reverses the tracking process, and it tracks you back to the original source via the screen that it doesn't have. The culprit is then obviously the one suspect there is. And then suddenly the Chupa Grande appears, and the culprit's assistant is... who? Yep, this one's not for me. It has mediocre character writing, a few memorable gags, and bad culprits. And you know, the thing that really gets me is that the fact that Chupacabra has two completely different, yet equally popular depictions in culture, could have been a great basis for a Scooby-Doo. Like, actually think about that. It could have been a really good base for a Scooby-Doo movie, as they talk about the two different varying depictions of the creature, and they try to figure out, okay, which one's real, is there a real one, what's going on? They didn't do that. I do think the gag where the characters try to use cultural appropriation and it just immediately fails is quite funny though.
Oh, come on, just give it a try. All right, maybe just a little.
Yes, I am a nerd.
Music of the Vampire, I genuinely believe had the potential to be a great movie. A Scooby-Doo musical? Count me in! We could even get the Hex Girls back and do something fun. I mean, vampires are the name of the game here. But no, the musical element is a detriment. I think every single song in this movie is bad except like the first one. For the most part, the songs are just characters sing their way through stuff, and they add nothing of note, pun. Along with that, the movie struggles in its mystery, its writing, and its characters. The mystery is weak. It becomes extremely obvious the moment you remember that the supposed vampire could only come from one guy. And that'll be pretty soon after it shows up, because the movie reminds you of that immediately. The culprit is definitely among the more sympathetic characters, but that actively hurts the movie, because they treat this man, whose family name and career is in the dumps, worse than the aggressive hate mob or the capitalist bitch. Our main heroes are split into two groups all movie. Big shocker, it's Scooby and Shaggy, and Daphne, Velma, and Fred. Scooby and Shaggy run off because Shaggy's terrified he's going to become a vampire, and this goes nowhere. They find out about the hover shoes, they have a bad song, and a 30-second breakup that's over immediately. They have no role to play, a severe overcorrection of the issue where they sometimes get way more focused than the others. But the other three do all the work, yet barely acknowledge that the two of them are missing. It's so out of character for them to not care. They're so protective of those guys, it's insane. It doesn't make any sense. Fred gets to Aura Farm, which is funny. Velma is fun. Daphne's main role is to be seduced and kidnapped. Okay, back to the classic era, I see. It's actually weird. This is a movie where there's a lot of very physical stuff going on. This would have been Daphne's time to shine with her athleticism. I just think in every step this movie fumbles. It's not particularly interesting or fun. The character writing is baffling. The only reason it's above the lower ones is the animation's really nice and can be fantastic at points. Otherwise, it probably deserves to be even lower. I just felt like bumping it up like 2 spots because it looks nice. Oh, and no Hex Girls, which is lame.
God, young man, kill yourself!
Gourmet Ghost is maybe the least interesting movie of all time. The monster design is neat, but the rest of the movie offers nothing. I don't give a fuck about Fred's chef relative Guy Man. He exists so Shaggy and Scooby can make food jokes. I don't care about the Russian chef woman. She exists so they can forget that Shaggy is an accomplished chef. And no, I don't care if he isn't one in this continuity, it's a part of the character that I just think makes sense to be universal. Most of all, I don't give a fuck about any of these random celebrities. I'm really annoyed honestly, because I feel like I should like this movie. The idea of a multi-layered conspiracy on top of conspiracy being uncovered by the gang is good. Something about it just didn't hit for me here. It isn't a very engaging movie, I didn't give a fuck, I have nothing else to say about it. Boring!
And his name is John!
So yeah, I've been known to be a fan of the WWE in the past, something that progressively gets harder as time goes on and the issues of WWE become more and more prominent with time. But hey, maybe Wrestlemania Mystery could have been a fun movie. I mean, it has John Cena and Kane and Triple H, a cameo from Big Show, and a handful of other wrestlers people care about slightly. It also has The Miz, but I genuinely did not recognize him at first despite him wearing a suit labeled awesome. Beyond just showing off wrestlers and a handful of scenes where they do some ridiculous shit, I don't think this movie offers anything. The WWE action here is just not impressive when it's animated. When it's 2 real people or more throwing each other around and doing some crazy athletic flipping shit, that's impressive. Here, it's okay. Shaggy and Scooby's storyline is basically unimportant and it only plays a role in getting them to fight Kane for a bit. From there on, it basically just is a really bad ad for WrestleMania that thinks it's more than it is. That is that it also thinks it has an inkling of Scooby-Doo, but there's like one culprit for the whole movie. The monster kind of looks cool until you kind of realize it's just a red glowing bear. It doesn't do anything interesting. It's kind of funny to see the superstars get their asses kicked or to see John Cena do something blatantly superhuman, but the reveal is as expected weak. There are some animated versions of WWE moves which have nothing interesting and no over-the-top bullshit. God, I have nothing interesting to say. It's not the worst WWE advert out there, but that's only because I'm not stupid enough to do a ranking that would put Sir Sub 2 on it. Imagine being that level of stupid. Ha!
My name's Jack. Jack Pumpkinhead.
Alright, Lego Scooby-Doo Haunted Hollywood. I don't really care about this movie. It doesn't do much with the Lego gimmick, the comedy only every now and again actually hits and manages to be funny, the mystery is weak, and the culprits are the most obvious choices made. I really dislike how Daphne and Fred are flanderized in this one. Fred gets so into the director role that the safety of his friends becomes a secondary thing to him, and Daphne is so over the top in her vanity. I get this is some Lego exaggeration comedy, but it gets in the way of the bond between Mystery Incorporated, and it's wild how little of a role Shaggy ends up playing. But I've already talked about this movie before, I don't care to repeat myself if I can help it. It's not interesting, it's pretty boring, and we definitely should have gone to a Lego Scooby-Doo game instead.
Battle Brothers!
The first of all Scooby-Doo films. Welcome to the table! Scooby-Doo meets the Boo Brothers surprised me in quite a few ways. Some are good, like Scrappy-Doo was actually quite enjoyable here, and then some were bad, like the other ways. As a short Scooby-Doo mystery, it would be fine, but as an hour-plus long film, it kind of overstays its welcome. There are plenty of fun gags, like I found Shaggy commenting loudly about how dumb he is for being scared about someone following him, right as someone constantly tries to blow his brains out from behind, very amusing. It had those moments, but it also has, like, Shaggy is canonically a plantation owner now, because his parents seem to have been big money slavers. Fun. Shaggy is constantly being sexually assaulted by this woman while he screams and begs for her to stop kissing him. Constantly. Gross. And there's this one guy called Fuckwad. And there's this one guy called Farquaad trying desperately to steal Shaggy's, quote, family jewels. Lovely. And yeah, this movie also only has Shaggy, Scooby, and Scrappy. I don't know, I really wasn't expecting that from my first Scooby-Doo film of the marathon. The absence of the rest of the gang was noted. I genuinely feel like I needed something more here. Scooby and Shaggy barely feel like they're doing anything as Scrappy solves all the problems. Which is fine, I guess. There's also the titular Boo Brothers running around. Out of place actual ghosts with powers who are never proven to just be normal people, and are hyped up from the start as uber powerful creatures that do nothing in the movie really. I know, I like some stuff here, but I think it's a solid package. This wasn't really much. The more I think about it, the more I feel like all it did was give me things I didn't want to see or know about. Like, why does Shaggy own a plantation?
The key to any accent is to isolate the sounds that are specific to that accent. So in the
Pirates Ahoy, I actually really enjoyed it first. Fred's parents are fun characters, and I like how much of a dweeb his dad is. It's very charming, and I like their rapport with the rest of the team, and in general, the mystery cruise idea is pretty great. I like the team being so good at mystery solving that they actively made the experience worse for other people, just because they solve things too easily. And then when a real mystery comes in, they decide not to handle it because they're ruining it for everyone. The whole starting bit, I enjoyed, but for some reason, I just kind of stopped caring at a certain point. Like, I don't care about the main villain really, or the pirate mystery that felt like it went nowhere. I thought Fred and Daphne trying to pretend to be aliens was fun. I like Shaggy and Scooby being ones to save the day the way they did, and especially that Scooby was so quick to help even without a Scooby snack because, you know, Fred's parents are in danger. He's not gonna let down his mate. Though Shaggy being hesitant is not as cool. I kinda like the pirate song and Skunkbeard himself was fine. But like, yeah, the culprit is the one guy it could be, controlled by the hypnotist who is the only other culprit it could be. Still, I don't know how he did the big cloud thing. Biff just didn't make the most entertaining antagonist or the best twist. So I feel a bit lacklustered by the film overall. Whatever random hypno guy was up to is like, I guess it makes sense he'd want the gold meteor, but it makes him kind of a forgettable villain. I forgot he was actually the villain and not Biff. Plus, Biff plan revolved around time travel? Huh? Why though?
Chill out, dickwad.
Chill out, Scooby-Doo has the late great Renee Auberjonois of Odo fame in this movie, and frankly, I find that to be the most interesting of things in this film. Well, no, to be fair, I do think the premise is quite solid. The gang is on holiday, but instead of them stumbling into a mystery, Shaggy and Scooby are fucking kidnapped and manipulated into being into one. forcing the others to have to leave their holiday to go find their friends. See Music of the Vampire? They will go across countries to make sure these guys are okay. We follow two separate stories that eventually converge, with Shaggy and Scooby running into a fucking Bigfoot, you son of a bitch! And the others tracking them and finding clues throughout. We of course get some requisite fun chases and decent bits of animation. I find the team being split here to be an interesting choice, but it is also just the normal sets of team members. At least Daphne gets to say the Scooby-Doo where are you thing instead of just Shaggy saying it. But it's a bit weird how quickly Shaggy and Scooby stop caring about getting back to the gang. At the very least, their tenacity in finding their buddies is great, and Dell gets to come back from the Loch Ness movie, and that's pretty fun. And Dr. Fuckface is also okay, but Idiot tries to find Shangri-La in the Himalayas, when Lost Horizon clearly described it as being in the Kunlun. Wait, what do you mean it's in the Himalayas in this movie? Unfortunately, where this movie really fails for me is that it has what I consider to be one of the all-time weakest mysteries in all of Scooby-Doo. The hints and clues are so obvious and the culprit's so clear that by the 30-minute mark I had not only guessed the culprit, but also the exact method and motivation. They introduced the clues around the 30-minute mark, by the way. It also is a bit annoying they don't explain how Minga even managed this. As I said earlier, I'm alright with these ridiculous contraptions normally, but this film makes an active plot point that the Tibetans in this area have very little technology. She shouldn't have access to this level of tech. So, why? How? Like, it's cute, I guess, how things work out for Dell, but it does make most of the movie fall apart as a mystery. And frankly, the chases got really tiring in this one. Like, there is a limit, I feel, because, like, it is lucky that Scooby-Doo always tends to be at least a little fun, but there is a limit because I feel like this movie has a lot of very samey chases. And that's probably because Shaggy and Scooby are on their own for most of the film, and have so little to do outside of being chased, and they don't contribute much to the team here, or really anything, because they are too far away and they can't. So it's just like Yeti chases, again and again. I guess it's a bit neat that Professor Jeffries isn't the culprit, being as he is an obvious red herring, but he's still a crook, and he has his own motivations separate from the monster. Usually the red herrings in Scooby-Doo tend to go unpunished or somehow be totally not a bad guy despite acting like one, but here he is a dickhead indeed. I appreciate that.
Your whole flying circus can suck it, Big Top!
Maybe I just don't like circus stories, but Big Top did nothing for me. I didn't care much for the setup of most of the characters, and the circus stuff was kinda boring when it's not real people doing it. I didn't care much for the issues the circus workers had, and the mystery was mostly just kinda boring. Most of the cast have a character in the circus they're supposed to be partnered with, but it felt like the only one that really mattered was with Fred's storyline. That was oddly mostly about a non-love triangle and has minimal interesting resolution. I can say I like some jokes, in particular Fred saying he could have gotten good at trapeze if he didn't break all those bones, followed later on by the reveal that it wasn't his own bones he was breaking, but his partner who he dropped, and then also the rest of the crowd that also got all their bones broken. That was genuinely quite amusing. At the same time though, it's an example of how the movie kinda slots the cast into their known traits, and doesn't bother to give them more depth. Beyond Fred's honestly fairly cringeworthy love triangle, Shaggy has a falling out with Scooby that I found really weird and out of place and bad, Velma learns to braven up a bit, which at least gets a payoff, but Daphne is super competent before they start training, so she doesn't get an arc, I guess. I'm gonna be honest, the Scooby Gang pretending to work in a circus to catch a criminal sounds more like a concept for a random cartoon episode than a full-length movie. Like, most Scooby-Doo films warrant being a movie, usually. A film focusing on Shaggy's struggles with his bravery? Fair enough. The Loch Ness Monster? That creature deserves a movie. An exploration on our character's ancestries or wider family? Sure, that could be explained more with a movie length. And then there's Big Top. They're at a circus in this one. What does kind of save the movie though is that ending. After the lackluster mystery is solved, Velma has a sudden realization that there was a culprit the whole time, which is actually very well foreshadowed, and the fake out actually got me. I really thought the movie was over, and then they hit you with, hold on guys, wait a second. There's also an intense train chase as a result of it. That was a good swerve that I thought was pretty well done. That helped this movie jump a good 3 or 4 spots up in this ranking. Getting up to that point maybe wasn't worth it, but what was actually there was good in the end.
Just turn around and walk away.
You're a...
Spike!
You're a bloody puppet!
Scooby-Doo Adventures the Mystery Map is a really weird one. It's about 45 minutes long and done entirely in a puppet style. This is basically where the interest begins and ends. Is this ranked too high? Yes. It is a fun novelty and probably really appealing to certain age demographics. It doesn't offer much else to me. I can't say it does anything especially wrong though. I think this can be a fun time with its own fairly amusing bits and gags. It just doesn't do much more than ride on the novelty factor. Being aimed at such a young audience, the mysteries are also very basic and very uninteresting. They basically amount to, I got the answer from a thing you couldn't have known about beforehand, which I get isn't going to be brain taxing to a kid, but not challenging kids is how you stop them from scrunching their minds up into giving their brains a wrinkle or two. Being so short, it doesn't really have much of a story either, and also that barely at all looks like Daphne. I don't think there's much more to say past, it looks funny. The only reason I have this up here is because I find it inoffensive, and I think it's aiming for such a low target that I might as well not put it in there with the ones I actively dislike or have beef with. Because at that point, it's like I'm picking a fight with all these experienced boxers, and then I stop midway to smack a kid in the teeth.
Are you challenging me?
The original live-action take on Scooby-Doo is probably most defined by having no clue what it wants to be. On one hand, this is a kid-friendly, light-hearted, soft horror story with goofy slapstick and fart competitions. On the other hand, this is a edgier teenage take on the franchise with excessive sexual humor, and all of our heroes except Shaggy and sometimes Scooby being massive assholes, as well as Fred being a chauvinistic, narcissistic pervert for some reason. It's clear that things are changed up the movie was in production, not helped by how the movie is just stealing its ideas from zombie islands, or the actors that put their everything into their performances even when it doesn't warrant it. Now, while Fred is a big dick, I don't mind the other four outside of them being assholes. Daphne learning to fight so she doesn't end up being a damsel from now on makes sense. Velma, I mean, she doesn't get to do much, but her getting to team up with Fred for once was neat. And Shaggy is so perfect that, like, yeah, no shit Lulu would go on to take over the role, even in animation. Scooby's mostly fine. He's fun, he's silly, he's goofy. He's also okay with abandoning his nephew on the road. Yeah, so, Scrappy-Doo. His role kinda sucks. Scrappy being a loser baby villain is one thing. That is the movie playing into the culture of the time, and Scrappy's hatedom didn't start lessening until many years later. But the way in which he's revealed and everything about it is awful. Depicting the gang as kicking him out to basically just die in the desert doesn't make them look very good. Yes, he was out of character and an asshole here, and he pissed on Daphne. That doesn't warrant doggy death. They try to mask this as not too bad by having Velma say, "He wasn't even a puppy," but doing so involves her mocking him for being disabled. Following this, his reveal is entirely nonsensical with no foreshadowing. His entire existence in the movie prior to the big reveal is a drunken flashback that comes from nowhere, and ties into, by far, the worst romance Velma had in any of these movies. Once he's revealed, it's hard not to kinda root for him to kill the team, cause like, they kinda deserve it, and like, it's just a shame he wants to destroy the world too, because that's the sole thing that makes it hard to not want him to win. Around him are demons who scream of 90s CGI in this 2002 movie, Mary Jane, who is a very one-note love interest for Shaggy, and no other interesting elements. What helps the movie is that it is sometimes really funny. Fred especially, while not being Fred, is one of the funniest characters in this film. There is a fun enough vibe when the characters are just mystery solving and getting shit done, and the opening of this film kinda shows that this cast would be perfect for a standard Scooby-Doo mystery story without them all at each other's necks. If there was like a TV show with this cast that was just a normal Scooby-Doo show, that would be a little bit killer. This film can be fun, it can be enjoyable, it has good jokes, it has a great cast and a few fun scenes of the team doing their thing. If it had a better grasp of what tone it wanted between edgy teen and young kid, as well as a better villain and less scenes of our heroes being assholes, I'd call this a really good movie. As it is, I think I'm generous calling it just good.
Creeper. Oh man.
Frankencreepy I can best describe as a potential movie. It has a lot going for it, but also a lot that is letting it down. For one thing, it has a very snappy editing style, and while I'm not sure I'd like it to be consistent for Scooby-Doo, it does give this movie its own fun charm, and some of the cutaways also help by being very funny. The ideas of the movie are great. It explored Velma's familial history and gives a personal reason for her motivations. The gang all being targeted based on their superficial elements is sensible, almost. And let's talk about it. We have the mystery machine being destroyed and getting Fred into a rut until he realizes his friends are in danger and he locks in. That works for me. Shaggy and Scooby being acupunctured in the arse by Lederhosen, and so that they're tricked into being hungry until the clothes happen to get destroyed. That's stretching what I can accept. Daphne being fucking attacked through her allergies to shellfish, and then put in an inflatable fat suit to make her think she's ugly now because she's fat, without her ever noticing that she isn't feeling anything when she touches stuff with her body, or that she's clearly inside a costume, or anyone noticing she feels like a balloon, or anything like that, until she happens to pop her costume on a rock? That's fucking stupid. Velma being hypnotized into wanting to recreate the experiment that forever tarnished her family name. Wait a minute, why did she get hypnotized? Was there no other way? Why not hypnotize all the others too? And she only gets taken out of hypnosis by sheer fucking coincidence. What? Velma kinda starts out insufferable in this movie, refusing to believe in anything supernatural despite having encountered the supernatural before. Even if we accept this is a kind of continuity is a bit wibbly, being a vehement skeptic unwilling to accept the supernatural could exist just isn't part of her character. I've said it before, she's smart enough to consider all things, not just the rational. It feels like her family history really isn't all that integral at points too. And like, God, the hypnosis thing? Hypnosis! Just hypnotize the whole gang! At least I really like the ending of what it's going for. Not only is the tiny guy in his suit paying off a really stupid joke made at the start of the movie, but the idea of the gang being caught in a conspiracy targeting specifically what they're weak to by a bunch of former criminals they've exposed is fantastic. I wish they did more with it. It's just like, I don't know if this reveal was really used in an interesting way. The movie still has its strong suits. I think it's quite funny. I like the whole bit about the villains failing because they assumed what the gang's most important traits were, without realizing that the real thing keeping the gang together was their friendship. Even if we're being honest, this only applies to Fred and maybe Daphne, who only snapped out of their issues as a result of friendship. And I also like how this continues their relationship after the previous Wrestlemania Mystery had Daphne go back to sipping for some other guy in John Wrestler. Fred saying that he didn't notice anything different about Daphne because she's always beautiful to him, no matter what, high-key goated of him. That's awesome, that's my guy. And Daphne may have just coincidentally escaped from her extremely stupid predicament, but at least the coincidence of her being saved came about because of her desperation for trying to save Fred after he's incapacitated. Their bond was a highlight, and I like that the message could have been fat equals bad. But because of Fred and what he says and how it interacts with Daphne, the message becomes fat does not equal bad, and you should not be made to feel like it does. My guy. There's good and there's bad. I think it's enough to balance out and say that I enjoyed Frankencreepy. Also, the music in the opening is epic. It's really foreboding and feels like it fits a much more dramatic movie than what we got.
We're some real pretty shit now, man!
Moon Monster Madness is a mixed bag of good stuff and also a lot of nothing. As the movie kinda wants to be Alien for kiddies, which is an odd, if admirable choice for what's essentially a children's horror comedy franchise. While I like the approach, I also feel like it doesn't work when you kind of just know from the start the alien isn't real. If it was, or even if there was a chance it was real, that might be better, but that's really not where my issues come in. My issues come in with some of the character writing. Fred's subplot about annoying his idols but stepping up when needed and making them see that he really is just an earnest guy who is too excitable and oblivious to his own annoyance, thus regaining their respect in the end, is fine. I like it. It also requires Fred to be a bit more of a thick-headed idiot than usual, but it's fine. Scooby and Shaggy are just eating and shit, and they have a few nice moments with their idol, but I wish they took more of his advice on how to cope with theater heart. They kind of brush off his singing, which makes me feel like the movie is mocking the deep voice guy for having a more effeminate singing voice, and I don't like that. But they remain his fans in the end, so it's not that bad. Velma and Daphne's subplot, though, was really bad to me. Daphne surpasses Velma in a single test, and starts getting a lot of attention from a single person in the higher-ups of the space program. As a result, Velma spends the whole movie really crabby, irritable, and taking jabs at Daphne. Their bickering gets old quick, especially as Velma is just undeniably in the wrong. If she was just a bit jealous and snappy, that's one thing, but she constantly targets Daphne as if Daphne did something wrong, and in the end has this whole speech about, "You're the hot one and the athletic one, and I'm no longer the smart one, and then what's left for me?" Velma, she passed you in a single fucking test, get over yourself. Especially when previous movies have had Daphne in full support of Velma when someone considers her the hot one over Daphne. Like, Daphne is a good supportive friend, while Velma is a jealous bitch. Also, I don't buy her being a wholesale alien denier. She should be smart enough to know that aliens likely do exist, and instead be skeptical that the one we're currently dealing with is a real alien. That would be more in line with her scientific mind. That's the crux of the film, and most of what fills in the long span of dead space where nothing is happening. and just stuff doesn't work for me. Thankfully, the movie is really saved by its great villain. Shannon is a really cool antagonist who is fully ready to nuke the entire team and their allies, all for a believable reason that makes sense as motivation, at least by the standards of Scooby-Doo. And there are definitely some funny moments, like when everyone adds to the increasingly ridiculous alien invasion fantasy. I do think some of the smaller elements really work for this movie. Hell, I'd say the music is really good at adding this grand space adventure tone at points. It really makes it stand out in a good way. It's just a shame the main conflict of the film does not work for me, and makes me dislike Velma, and I consider writing issues that hurt the characters a bit more egregious than some other problems one could have. Oh, but the reveal that Shaggy was the one who got the higher test scores is great, especially because you can't even tell if he genuinely scored better than Velma, or if Shannon is just saying it to piss the two of those girls off.
In this town there lived an outlaw by the name of Texas Red.
Shaggy's Showdown is, enjoyable. I do like any time we get to explore the heritage of the characters, and there's some fun stuff in the movie, but it didn't inspire me much. Like, I didn't like Buddy, he has an annoying song an hour in, and Daphne fangirling over someone half her age is really cringe to me. It feels like the best animation in the movie was given to this song, and that's because they really thought this would hit it off with the kids. It's one of those, like, how do you do, fellow Rizgyat Sigmas moments. I like Shaggy learning to be more confident in his horse riding skills and showing himself as just competent in a way we don't normally see. That was interesting. The whole idea of Shaggy being upset that he looks like a crook in his ancestral tree and following the mystery to absolve that ancestor of his crimes is a good one. Like, that could make for a great movie, but I just say it's a solid part of an okay film. They tried to do something more with Shaggy than most movies. They just kind of focused on him and Scooby being scared, but I don't know if it landed exactly as it should have. The monster looks cool. I like me a ghost cowboy thing with fire powers. Not the most common archetype, but I enjoy it when it comes around. He looks neat, and again, his ties to Shaggy's ancestry are conceptually very interesting, and could have been given a bigger focus in a better movie to properly explore the idea. For the most part, I felt nothing, and I didn't get much from it. I didn't even necessarily have all that much to say. Like, yeah, the monster's cool, but the mystery's pretty weak in my opinion, and I never felt like it was a primary focus, even though it was brought up not uncommonly. Fred is too incompetent in this movie, and this was the point where the films began to flip too far into Fred being clumsy and dumb, and began to make him an idiot who can't do anything. Like, he just talks about all the stuff he can do, comically fails, and gets publicly humiliated. That said, I do like that ending. The way they catch the ghost by using the pre-established chemicals the villain himself used to mark him with a net and then trick him into stepping under a blacklight to reveal himself is actually really cool, followed by a solid enough investigation and a pretty great ending where Shaggy is practical about running off to save the day with his newly found horse riding skills. He found his confidence in this skill, and so he found his confidence overall. Scooby latches onto the villain's vehicle to disrupt him, the gang use fireworks to help light the area up so they can see better. It's a great example in teamwork. Velma and Daphne did most of the investigating earlier, Shaggy and Scooby do the physical work, and Fred comes up with the idea to use the fireworks to help them from afar. It's a great way to make everyone contribute. There are definitely a few things I like about this movie, and it does mean I'm comfortable having it up here, especially that little ending bit of Shaggy seeing a ghost of his own ancestor who silently thanks him, and for one of the only times Shaggy shows no fear at the sight of a ghost. It's cool. And, there's also like Velma's autistic hyperfixation on fonts, which I find really fun. She's just like me, for real, but if Kamen Riders were fonts. We put more all-you-can-eat buffets out of business than E. coli is a banger line too. And the bit about greedy businessmen coming up with a silly idea for a movie based on a real person that completely trivializes the history is quite amusing, especially if they say it directly to the face of that person's own descendant. This is a really strange Scooby-Doo film. Ghoul School has no Mystery, no Mystery Inc., no villain for half the movie, and a second half of the movie that has no connection to the first. I'm not joking. The first half of Ghoul School is Shaggy taking a job to coach a bunch of little girls in volleyball. He arrives with the two dogs and finds out they're the daughters of iconic supernatural monsters and a ghost. And it's relatively charming. Shaggy and Scooby go from afraid to getting to know the girls and actually becoming friends. A nice basic message about not judging by appearance. They have their volleyball game against a bunch of generic and uninteresting boys, and then there's a whole half of the movie left. In this half, a villain called Revolta, who has been barely there the whole movie, finally rears her head in. She immediately proves herself a boring, uninteresting antagonist whose personal motivation of being mad that the classic monsters have gone soft and care more about their kids than anything else kinda goes nowhere despite being conceptually interesting. She mind controls the girls, meaning those characters are absent for most of the second half and just roam around saying nothing. It's kind of uninteresting. There's no real Scooby-Dooing, and you could replace Shaggy, Scooby, and Scrappy with any other cartoon trio that are scared of ghosts, and nothing would change in the story. It's shockingly generic at points, and for every kind of funny joke, there's about 50 uninteresting monster puns. I think the action isn't all that neat or funny, the mirror monster is only kind of endearing for how dumb he is, and the boys are super boring characters we spend too much time with. They have no personality. The Colonel is kind of fun at points, but he suffers from the volleyball story being overall unimportant to the final act. The volleyball game itself is kind of fun, I guess I enjoyed it. But in the end, with Ghoul School, you get a disjointed movie split into two almost entirely unrelated halves that have nothing to do with Scooby-Doo. There's a few charming monster characters and of course the inherent charm of Shaggy and Scooby, but it's not enough to save the movie from just being, I enjoyed it, and it's just alright. There's also one villain called the Creeper who spends all his time staring at girls and slobbering his tongue out when he corners the werewolf girl. Yeah. Curse of the Speed Demon is a noted improvement over the first WWE crossover, going to a far more silly and over-the-top style where it's all based around some ridiculous race. That gives the movie a way bigger novelty factor and makes it far more fun. The car action is a lot more unique than just recreating matches but without the intrigue. The greater willingness to play into kayfabe with all the just superhuman feats is much more appreciated too, as is giving the film's guest star a more personal motivation with Undertaker out to get revenge for the villain harming his buddy Dusty Rhodes. His team up with Scooby and Shaggy is fun too, and I like the racing scenes. Unfortunately, the rest of the Scooby gang don't feel all that important. I do like that Daphne isn't just simping for superstars and that Fred's car knowledge plays a factor, but I wish they had a bigger role, because the actual mystery isn't that big a focus and all the events take place on the raceway. When the mystery is solved, it doesn't feel very satisfying, and I wasn't super invested. I respect the choice to actually make one of the superstars the culprit this time though, even if it was pretty much all glazing Triple K, as Hunter beats up all the wrestlers to fight him, he matches blows with the Undertaker, and it takes 1 billion hits to go down. Still, they had the guts to make him the villain, which is nice. This makes the movie overall a very fun bullshit romp. Not the most interesting Scooby-Doo movie, and not the best balanced crossover, but it's fun enough. Scooby-Doo and the Goblin King wasn't doing much for me for a while. As much as I like the idea of the movie being Shaggy and Scooby on a journey to save Halloween, finding the Goblin King and stopping the bad guy from taking his powers, I was just not very interested. The slapstick was sometimes fine, and some humor was good, but a lot of this movie was almost completely irrelevant scenes of random Halloween bullshit, and I didn't find that particularly interesting. I like Shaggy and Scooby, I don't mind the movie being primarily about them, but the rest of the gang are barely here and don't get to fucking do or contribute anything. The villain is also barely in the movie and has almost no personality. The only character I really liked was old Jack-O-Lantern. For one thing, obviously I'm biased as a pumpkin man myself, but he was also quite fun, and I liked how he was willing to get into a scrap despite just being a pumpkin. But I did kinda get behind the movie near the end. The monster machine was a brief but fucking awesome thing. The Goblin King himself was pretty cool. I really like the one joke with the skeleton. Of course it was a skeleton that fucking killed me. The entire ending sequence was just sick. And this is where I start to feel the Halloween spirit a bit more. Yeah, this is cool shit. I like this. And you know what? I also really like the start of this movie. Shaggy not being afraid on Halloween because it's the one time of the year where he can expect everything to be fake is quite a fun character idea. I like him being actually really competent in solving mysteries when he's not afraid. It helps show his role in the group a bit better. There's definitely something here, and I'm sure the movie might grow on me with time, but I just don't care for a decent chunk of it that amounts to nonsense pseudo-Halloween stuff. The movie is fun, but it's the ending that really brings it up for me. And again, Jack's awesome. Fuck yeah, dude. You go be a jack-o'-lantern willing to throw with the hands you don't got. Okay. Let me explain why the Kiss movie's up here. I'm a metalhead, I like Kiss. And this Kiss movie is a stealth sequel to the Kiss Phantom of the Park film, which you might not be too shocked. Oh my god, Hanna-Barbera and Kiss doing a sequel to the Hanna-Barbera and Kiss collaboration. But no, that band really does not like that movie, so it being the basis for the depiction of a superpowered Kiss is insane to see here. The movie also plays into the themes of rock and metal band lore. You know, bands in these genres often have 3 paths for their lore. You have the power metal path of a fantasy story a la Avantasia or Rhapsody or Freedom Call. You have the black and death metal paths of Satanism, like all the actual satanic bands, or the cosmic music path a la Iron Maiden or Kiss. This sort of storyline commonly plays in the themes of great cosmic events and often space fantasy, featuring mascots and/or band members as not just weird characters but stand-ins for metal culture itself. You know, your Eddie the Head, your Set Abominate, your Hector, your Painkiller. They're technically divine beings, but more than that, they're brutal and violent, yet they represent something about self-expression. Kiss using their powers via music is itself that idea of self-expression being the ultimate force, defiance against the establishment, refusal to be anyone but yourself no matter the rules, for better or worse. Gene. And the movie really plays into that, involving a cosmic adventure on a spaceship electric guitar, and grand prophecies, mystic powers, unstoppable forces of destruction that represent the oppressive rules of society that force normalcy onto others, which is revealed to all be real by the end. Unfortunately, while this is pretty fun and absurd and makes for some cool action scenes accompanied by banger music, it also leaves the Scooby gang feeling extremely secondary. Shaggy and Scooby get to hang out with Kiss, Velma gets to begin her full descent from the observant one who considers everything, to a vehement denier and skeptic who will go through every hoop possible just to argue the mystical shit's fake and made up and has a rational explanation, not being she's trying to cope with it, no, that's just who she is now. Daphne spends a post-stage Fright movie cheating on Fred by simping on the celebrity guest star, again. Fred spends the whole movie insecure when compared to the celebrity star, again, and the mystery is very weak and plays a secondary role to the supernatural, which would be fine if the gang had more of a role in the supernatural. Like, I would have been so okay if they had been on stage playing their music, maybe enforce the free expression themes of the genre by having Kiss say, oh, it doesn't matter if their music isn't metal, it's a different genre, it doesn't even matter if it's good, as long as it expresses who you are. Frankly though, they do fuck all with it, and then they solve the mystery which doesn't feel like it matters. The revelation of all of it being real makes one wonder whether the reveal is even true, or if Kiss just set up a cover story to keep the masses unaware. That wouldn't really fit with the themes of the genre, and that's where I kind of have to draw the line, because this is a fun and entertaining Kiss movie, but a not great at all Scooby-Doo movie, and I can't let my enjoyment of Kiss overpower that. Half of this film doesn't work, the crossover is weak and doesn't do much. I hate Daphne and Fred's role, though the Ascot 5 song that Fred loves so much being made by Kiss themselves is really funny. And Velma is just giving me nothing here. I hate to say I'd prefer the movie without those three, but I'd honestly kind of prefer this whole movie without Scooby and the gang at all. They should not be here, they hold back the film and it's not even their fault. So I think it's a fun movie, but I also totally get why a lot of people might not, and it's not great as a crossover.
I think Coolsville sucks.
I have a confession to make. I like Scooby-Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed. Is it an all-timer? I kinda wish it was. Watching through this ranking and saving the live-action entries for later, I was hoping this would hit near the top of the list. Unfortunately, I think some cracks in the movie have become bigger with time. The film I do genuinely think has a lot going for it. The cast of the first live-action film are just as good in this one, but with better material and superior writing to make them less arseholey, and focus on their relationships properly, helping them all around be a lot more likable and fun. Even Shaggy and Scooby's beef with the other three just kinda revolves around Fred saying something without intending any harm, and those two lying to try and help and prove themselves. It's resolved amicably, though primarily off-screen, or rather annoyingly, without a proper conclusion. But yeah, they get the bit with Velma where she tells them how great and helpful they are, which I like, but I would like to see Fred's conversation with them be more prominent. The film's action is a highlight. The monsters have aged a bit, but the designs are on point. The silly slapstick and comedic fights with them are fantastic, and some of them still look great. The Black Knight and Pterodactyl are very memorable, the Tar Monster as a goat, and Kinetoclops is also great. The villain is... he comes across as cool, but the reveal is obvious and then takes a turn to the stupid. It's not scrappy tier, but the Ned element is pretty bad. The solution to how the villain and the villain's costume were simultaneously in the same proverbial room is that some guy we barely ever saw helped with it. What helps make up for it is that I find this movie kind of hysterical. I think Coolsville sucks, and "You're pushing your luck, Scoob!" are all-timer jokes in this series. Absolutely fantastic gags, I love it. There are plenty of jokes, some funny and some that are William Afton with tits. I wonder how this relates to Ballora and the FNAF lore. Velma's relationship with Seth Green isn't fantastic, but it is a step up from her last one in these films. And Daphne, well, she's just there, but she does help out a lot. I really like how she and Fred actively engage in the mystery solving when some films, even better ones than this, end up having Velma do almost all the work herself. But the movie does also do some things pretty bad. It relies a lot on references to previous Scooby-Doo series, with the faux ghost scene essentially being Shaggy name-dropping a bunch of villains from previous cartoon episodes. And while Shaggy and Scooby can be pretty fun, They are massively oversimplified in their comedy. They can be one-note gag machines in stories that don't try to play on their fear and courage, but this movie makes them even more cartoonish than usual, which is funny given this isn't a cartoon. They are a level of stupid so great that it's insane. I mean, one of Shaggy or Scooby usually tend to be the voice of reason for the other when it goes too far, but here they're both borderline brain dead, and again, they don't really talk about their problems with most of the gang. And being split into two groups all movie means they don't really get to hang out as a group of 5 much. Still, the opening museum attack and the mansion search are both really great sequences, and kind of make me feel like this cast and continuity of Scooby-Doo could have put out a genuinely phenomenal film if they got the chance. Wouldn't mind popping into that timeline to see what came of a potential Scooby-Doo 3.
Then, a mystery.
Well, this sure was a surprise. Scooby-Doo The Mystery Begins is almost an ideal live-action Scooby-Doo film. It has a solid mystery, lots of red herrings, and reasonable deductive moments. The end reveal is fairly obvious, I mean it was like the choice, but I think it filled the role of the gang's first ever mystery very well. As an origin story for the team, I actually think this is excellent. It shows them meeting properly, how different they are, yet also how they work together, come together, and bond together over a mutual love for mysteries. Meanwhile, Shaggy isn't there because he loves mysteries as much as because he just loves his friends, which fine by me. I love how they naturally slot into the roles we know them for. Fred brings people together and he comes up with plans. Daphne is a quick, pragmatic thinker who is knowledgeable in disguises. Velma is naturally very smart and good at both solving mysteries and figuring out the mechanics behind them. And then Shaggy is primarily very physical and active. They have a great rapport. The movie features one of the only scenes in any of these films where Shaggy and Fred just hang out and talk. I love that he doesn't really know about this food-eating sport Shaggy mentions, but he doesn't make fun of him for liking a weird competition. He's willing to give it a go and watch it with him. That's great. I think this is a fantastic version of these four. They may not have the same comedic qualities or acting chops as the original live-action cast, and Fred just does not look like Fred, somehow made extra notable by how everyone at least kinda resembles the originals. But they work for me, and I enjoy seeing them solve the mysteries and getting excited to solve more. The film has some unnecessary prequel elements, but I can forgive showing us where Scooby Snacks got their name, or the silly line that names the mystery machine. Oh, it's a mystery, this machine's still running. Because the movie did enough for me to say it earned those moments. It was clear the creators genuinely wanted to tell the origin story of the gang, and these were just fun little bits they thought would be amusing. I think they rightfully earned those more direct and cheesy fan service moments that don't otherwise affect the movie. Unfortunately, one thing lets this movie down. Not the ugliness of it or even the real ghosts, because I can accept real ghosts as like, oh, why are the gangs so up to prove other monsters are unreal? Because they know what real monsters are like, and that's also why Shaggy is really afraid, because he knows they can be real. Sure, fine. This movie is low budget, I can accept the fact that it looks shit as well. No, my issue is Scooby himself, who frankly doesn't need to be here, and not because I think the movie would be better without him. No, you need him there. I just think the movie fails to do anything with him, and I sometimes forgot he was even in the movie, because even though he has plenty of relevance, it just felt like every character got a lot of emphasis onto their arcs and relationships, while Scooby is sort of, and also Scooby-Doo is here. I think if Scooby got to have more of a focus, say the movie got an extra 10 minutes and a good chunk of it was devoted to, say, Scooby's whole character of like being a pup nobody wants and finally finding a family, this would have been an even higher ranking. This may not hit the same highs in terms of fun factor or comedy as a lot of what's around it, and there aren't nearly as memorable moments as even the 2 live-action films before it, but I just barely prefer it to Scooby-Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed. This is a surprisingly good one to me. Samurai Sword is a good Scooby-Doo film. I have one huge problem with it, but I think it's good. So when we look at the upsides, it has some great animation, especially in some of the action scenes. The mystery isn't great, but I don't think that's a detriment here, because the mystery is only a small part of the film, but I actually don't mind it in this regard. I like the idea of they solve the mystery, and then it keeps going. The final battle with the Black Samurai is cool, but the part I really like is the ending. When the Sword of Doom is destroyed by the Sword of Fate, the samurai can now rest in peace, as his own doomed existence has been destroyed, and he has met the end of where his fate took him. Miyumi was also a likable character, and I liked the whole puzzle-solving bit leading up to the mystery being solved, even if the villain's kind of obvious and revealed through bumbling stupidity. That said, on the smaller end of my issues, it is kind of redoing Witch's Ghost, but worse, with the villain reveal followed by, we're gonna free the real one storyline, that leads to the mystical ancient villain coming back and refusing to listen to the summoner and wreaking havoc. And frankly, the whole journey to get the Sword of Fate wasn't that interesting to me. I also really didn't like the natives bit that felt really out of place, a bit culturally insensitive, and implies something really creepy with how the scene cuts from Fred's admittedly funny line to a scene showing Daphne, Velma, and Miyumi have all been stripped of their tops and put in skimpier clothes. Ugh. My biggest issue is probably Daphne herself. Up to this point, the movies have had a bit of an arc, mostly in the background, of Daphne learning how to fight and putting that into practice more. This becomes the main focus at the start of the film, where Daphne joins a martial arts tournament to test herself, and this is framing it as Daphne's movie, only for her to be captured really easily and for it to become a Shaggy Scooby story. I love Shaggy and Scooby, but I was getting a bit sick of how many movies cast away the other three to focus on them. I also liked Fred, Daphne, and Velma, and I thought this film would focus on Daphne, who was easily the most neglected by this point. But no, it's a Shaggy Scooby story. It could have been Daphne and Scooby to shake up the formula and give Daphne a bigger role. Or hell, given this was Casey Kasem's last performance as Shaggy, even a Daphne and Shaggy film. Even a Daphne Scooby Shaggy 3-team, which he takes the lead, a la 13 Ghosts. As it is, those two save the day, Velma deactivates the robot ninjas, Fred at least drives the fucking car, while Daphne gets one pointless action scene that's later revealed to have actually helped the bad guys. And that's it. It's a real shame because they brought down what I do think is a very fun movie. It even has that one bit about Fred not having a catchphrase in it. Even though previous movies have made jokes about his catchphrase being, looks like there's a mystery to solve and let's split up, gang. But sometimes it just takes one big flaw to make a movie go from really good to good. It's a good movie.
Pumpkin, the king of ghosts!
Okay, you know me, big pumpkin fan. Of course I liked Happy Halloween Scooby-Doo, but to me it's not nearly as notable for the fact that all the pumpkins are in it, as it is for how manically hilarious it is. The movie features the Scarecrow from DC Comics, despite a later line implying that Aquaman is maybe fictional, so I don't know how that works, as well as the shockingly charming set of celebrity roles from Elvira and Bill Nye, who managed to skirt past being an obtrusive set of sellouts and instead end up being really funny. I think it's mostly because Elvira and Bill are prone to playing up their own silliness and being really goofy. They have no issues about being shown in an imperfect light, with Elvira being a bit of a douche and Bill being occasionally completely unhelpful in the funniest of ways. Once the movie begins, it basically never stops. Pumpkin monsters rampage and that's the whole bit. The entire movie feels like one big chase as they try to figure out the mystery while escaping an endless horde of flying zombie pumpkins. Now the movie is held back a bit by some ridiculously bad dialogues. I mean, one character says, "You're a regular Mary Sue," unironically. Some of the dialogue goes beyond cheesy and into annoying and eye-rolling. That was balanced out by things like the heavy synthesizer score at points. It called back to the soundscape of 80s slasher films. Or there's bits like Scarecrow going out of his way to say that, "Oh, Elvira, I'm a big fan." Like, what? I think if anything held back this action-packed amusement fest, it would be a combination of a mystery that didn't hit for me, and Velma being really annoying. I do like her arc of realizing she needs to rely on her friends instead of trying to solve everything herself, but in the end, she does solve everything herself. All her friends do is see some stuff that she literally didn't see with her eyes, and then Vulcan mind meld with her. She chews out Shaggy and Scooby very harshly, and she has basically all the focus. Meanwhile, Daphne gets a charming but shallow friendship plot with Elvira, and Fred is also there. I do think though this is a very fun movie, one that's mostly coasting by on the fact that I don't have many major problems with it. But this is just a great time, front to back, just pure nonsense.
Supposedly haunted by a machete-wielding spook named Jason Voorhees.
Something about Camp Scare kind of failed to hit for me, and the annoying thing is I don't know why, because I have very little to nothing bad to say about it, and most of it is really good. The animation, the music, the story, it's all solid. It's a Fred-focused film. I quite like that. The camp setup is fun, and I actually appreciate the camp being partially closed. It lets them avoid making a lot of the movie those classic camp cliches over and over. Fred is so happy to just do camp shit, and I find that very charming. It's hard not to love the guy when he's written to be the most excitable, nice dude who only wants to have a good time. He wants to make sure everyone around him's having a good time, he wants to be a good influence, and I think films like this let Frank Welker channel his natural, likable dorkiness, and it just shines. He's such a great voice actor, managed to breathe so much life and whimsy into the character. And I kinda like the way Shaggy and Scooby are separate from the other three. Like, it's not just for the sake of we gotta put them into the two groups in the gang. Rather, you know, Fred's the guy in charge, Daphne and Velma are helping out with the activities, Scooby and Shaggy for the most part are the chefs who cook dinner for everyone. It's a really natural way to keep them separate without making it feel like they're two distinct groups of friends who just happen to hang out as a group of 5. I think Jessica is one of the more fun, for lack of a better term, Fred Jones side pieces, just because she's pretty likable outside of that role, and her stuff with Daphne is more in the background instead of a primary focus. It's just there for fun gags, and her role isn't defined by this purpose. And Bert is a pretty fun side character too, I liked him. The villains are neat. I think the reveal that one of the kids was actually the villain is very funny, if lacking a bit in any real impact, but given it is plays off as a joke, I don't mind that much. That's great, but I think the actual villain is About the only character trait he has is that he thinks Velma is hot and keeps making passes at her. Like, I like how supportive Daphne is to Velma here, and that's nice, but Velma doesn't reciprocate these feelings, and Daphne teasing her with, wow, someone actually likes you, is a little far. And like, the amount of dirty looks she gives this guy should be enough to get across that he needs to stop. The monsters themselves can be fine, but there's like 3 of them, and only one is particularly interesting. They're basically running from a slasher movie villain, and I do find that amusing. It's the closest you'll get to a film crossover between Jason Voorhees and Scooby-Doo, which I think was a great choice for a Scooby-Doo camp movie. Maybe they played their hand a little too hard though, being as they had the chance for a camp movie and so put in a slasher villain, but also a lake monster and for some reason a ghost? I don't know what that was all about. The movie could have worked fine if it was just a slasher villain, especially because there would have been a potential realism factor of maybe the monster is just a killer. That would be a unique fear factor in this franchise and could have made the horror sequences more potent. Fred also straight up pushes this guy out the top of a bell tower to his potential death, and Scooby later tries to run him over with the mystery machine. Metal. Of the kids, the one that keeps imitating Fred is fun, and I like that even though he's super competent to the point of pulling off stuff that Fred can't, Fred's strength of character and capacity for leadership gives the kid a genuine reason to look up for him. But of course, it's the one with the purple hair that got my attention. I quite liked her arc. In particular, her bonding with Velma and maturing over the movie from the broody goth girl into more of a tech-savvy action girl like Velma was quite charming. I almost wish there were more camp kids to copy off the other team members, but those team members are Daphne, who's definitely not someone I want kids imitating, Scooby, who is a dog, and Shaggy, who is already being copied by the fat kid who turns out to be the villain. So I think it's fine. I think the part of this movie that isn't hitting and thus is maybe leaving it a little lower than I'd like is that the mystery wasn't great and I wasn't in tune for some of the less important chase sequences. It's not a follow the movie too badly though. I still think this is a really fun movie and definitely a good one.
What is new with you, fellow normal dog?
Scooby-Doo and Krypto 2 might be the most solid movie that doesn't hit any insane heights. Like, yeah, it's solid. It has a lot of funny jokes, especially to me, Shaggy running through all of Green Arrow's most useless trick arrows trying to hit something with no body is really funny. Lex Luthor is a treat, he's amusing, he's consistently entertaining, I appreciate him being the villain, and that isn't really a twist as much as his specific role in the villainy is the twist. Aside from Fred constantly bugging Daphne about shit Jimmy Olsen said, I think this is the best the two of them have been in a while. They have great chemistry, I like how they play off each other, both get pretty fun moments using Batman's utility belt, though oddly he's not in this movie. Velma is fun, Shaggy and Scooby are fun, and Krypto is, fine? I think the characters rattling off the names of all the DC villains is a bit weird, but they do pay it off with Shaggy directly parroting them, and then suddenly being attacked by holograms because of his loud mouth. It makes me wonder if this was studio mandated, and so the writers decided to make a whole joke out of having to name the characters. The chase is fun. It probably has one of my favorite examples of that bit where Shaggy and Scooby pretend to be random workers and everyone plays along with it. I especially like the bit with Wonder Woman's various assorted invisible vehicles and how that actually plays into things later in the big action set piece finale. Unfortunately, the only thing is that while I don't think this movie did much wrong, I don't think it did anything amazing. Like, it is just a solid film. Decent mystery, really funny. That's all. It could have been better, it could have been worse, it could have never seen the light of day, but I am glad it did, because I thought this was a good one.
Get off my yard.
Scooby-Doo Stage Fright has all the pieces to be an all-timer, and I could totally understand if this happened to be someone's favorite movie. Stage Fright does a lot right. It aims to develop Fred and Daphne's relationship, and includes a really nice scene of Daphne talking about it with Velma, and a very touching final love song during the talent show that pays off like 20 movies worth of really bad will they won't they. I like these moments a lot, and I think they add a lot of heart to the movie. On that note, I actually found the self-awareness really funny in this one. The characters address it in a very earnest and charming way. They don't point out the tropes and then make fun of them. They point out the tropes and have some fun dialogue. Like, Fred reveals that the whole time he assumed that it was normal for friends on vacations to happen upon monsters. It happens all the time with his gang, why wouldn't it happen all the time on other people's? Scooby and Shaggy's whole bit of sneaking into a no-dog zone via increasingly stupid ways is very funny, and I love the idea behind the culprit. The idea being that multiple different unrelated people came up with the same idea based on the same story for various different reasons, and were just fucking around the whole time. All the way to the final scene revealing yet one more Phantom. I really wonder if this is one movie that will get better with rewatches as you figure out which Phantom was who. That's really cool, and a great way to spice up the formula without doing something completely different and weird. Where I think the movie fails a little bit though is that Daphne and Fred's romance doesn't really develop much in the middle of the movie. They don't do much with it. And as much as I quite like the song at the end, right after that they have a bit where they realize winning the competition means the money doesn't go to the little girl who needs it to not go homeless. Delightful character, by the way. She does fire piano, but with a violin, and that's goated. But while I figured they were going to announce that they're giving the money away to her, or that after it was all done, the final scene would have them go to her after the show and give her the money, no, they stand there and make shit jokes until they're booed off stage, getting the money to her, but also ruining the night for the audience at the same time, and making some mid-ass cringe humor that I can't even enjoy for how they're parodying Scooby, which in theory would show their strong friendship. Speaking of which, the ending reveals that Fred has been talking to Shaggy and Scooby about Daphne the whole movie, and they have been given the same advice to him that Velma gave to Daphne. An insane missed opportunity not to give Fred and Shaggy's friendship more development, especially when Velma and Daphne get plenty and didn't need this as much. Though I guess they did to put Daphne in skimpy pajamas. But also, it could have even developed Shaggy and Velma's friendship implicitly by noting that Shaggy's sense of reason is influenced by Velma's constant Velma-ing. It would have been great to have that one extra scene to probably knit the whole group together. Also the talent show. While I love how every fandom has different motivations tied to it, those who are victims and not related to anything end up horrifically underused. Lotta is really over the top and amusing as a character, but she doesn't get time to shine. The ventriloquist is very charming, but also disappears unceremoniously, and the poor man's Hex girls just kind of fuck off, and probably only weren't the Hex girls because the filmmakers knew how pissed people would be if this was their big returning role. It's a shame because they could have added something more here, but I wouldn't even mind that as much if the other stuff I mentioned was there instead. This is still a very good movie to me, well deserving of being placed in the higher end. I just know that if this had more added to its main core of Fred and Daphne, it could have been in the upper echelon for me. I also feel like the final scene interrupting Fred and Daphne with Velma, while a bit amusing, should have just been left as a nice, earnest moment between them, because I do think they're very cute in this film especially. Still, I can't complain too much, I think this is a very good movie.
Dude, sick moves! What do you call that dance? Seizure?
Okay, I still really like Bingo Beach Blowout. It is easily my preferred of the two LEGO Scooby-Doo films, and I think a lot of that comes to how it uses its LEGO silliness. While the first one tried to make the characters really silly, this one tries to focus more on the scenarios being silly. Daphne, Shaggy, and Scooby are more on point. Velma, I can believe having a storyline where she feels challenged to try and be more sociable and doing her best, and Fred is just dorky enough that I'd buy it, even if I think the others finding him to be a bit of a loser with no sense of fun is really weird and out of character. The arc he and Velma have is fine. I mostly just like getting a story with those two on their own hanging out. It's not a character combo that's very common. Hell, neither is Daphne with the dumbass duo. It's a nice way to let the more thoughtful pair be a bit more silly, and the silly trio be the main investigators. The actual mystery isn't the greatest, but I still love that the obvious red herring is so obvious that even he's shocked that he's not the culprit. He's like, wait, but I'm an asshole, how could I not be the villain here? He has some really good lines. Now, sure, I don't care for the Jinkies dance bit, and the movie can sometimes go a bit far in its silliness, but it works enough for me to consider it one of the most fun Scooby-Doo films. It's genuinely a great time, though I won't spend too long on it. Again, this is the second time in its chair for these rankings. It's just a good fun Scooby-Doo movie that I like, but doesn't match up to the highs of the franchise.
RKO out of nowhere!
Scooby-Doo meets Courage the Cowardly Dog does something novel among Scooby-Doo crossovers. That is, it actually focuses on both sides and gives the characters something to do beyond letting the crossover characters be the focus. It tries to have an arc with Shaggy, Scooby, and Courage learning to swallow their fear when push comes to shove and fight for their friends. Velma gets to solve the case but not necessarily see it through without help. Daphne and Fred get some fun occasional bits, but you get a bit more of sweet and loving Muriel, and I love her supportive friendship with the Scooby Gang. It's a very different kind of support than what they usually get from older figures. And Eustace, he doesn't really sound like Eustace, and he has a rather straight out of nowhere rap number, but that's fine. But aside from his amusingly amicable relationship with Shaggy at times, despite them never referring to each other by name, he's a little wasted in this movie. The movie knows better than a lot of the films of its era. It doesn't try to overly rationalize things. While there is an explanation for all the weirdness of nowhere, it's not really a reasonable, rational explanation. The meteor through dark matter attracts weirdness and alters reality. This is a nonsensical explanation, and while I'd rather not have an explanation for the Courage show, this is about the best of what you could have. The double reveal of the cicada monster being the mayor being Captain LeQuack I think is pretty funny, as well as the reveal of the chef and the butler being the fucking army dudes. There are some really funny jokes in this movie, and I like that the animation does at times try to capture some Courage elements with the sheer amount of body warping he and Scooby do at points. I also do love the friendships and the crossover parts, and I think the movie is very entertaining. I also feel like it was maybe a bit too late to be at its best though. That is to say, this is a really good Courage story and a really good Scooby-Doo movie, but not necessarily the best Scooby-Doo story or Courage movie. As a Scooby-Doo story, I feel like the mystery wasn't very prominent, which is probably fine given the supernatural is real this time, but it could have been more, as it does feel like one of those Velma solves all situations films. And as a Courage movie, it definitely loses something in the minimal dark comedy. The movie captures the dry wit of Courage, but rarely the dark humor, the grotesque imagery, the strange shifts into different art styles to emphasize the abnormal. If anything, the giant cicada monster is also oddly reserved for the series. Yeah, the supernatural stuff being real for once in this era is very fun, and this movie has great moments, I just don't think it's playing to its best strengths. If this movie was made after like Cyberchase in that era where Zombie Island was still fresh in the mind, Courage had just ended and John Dilworth was more involved, this could have been an all-timer. It's still fun and enjoyable though. I can't say it's close to one of the lower ones on the ranking at all. It's definitely a really good movie.
Hey, you know who's gay? Us.
This movie barely even feels like a direct-to-DVD film. Trick or Treat Scooby-Doo has a really unorthodox premise, a wildly different, super bouncy animation style, and feels about just 10 minutes shy of a theatrical release. That's what I think really makes this movie work. It has a premise that's pretty fun. What if the gang didn't have any more mysteries to solve? How do they cope with this? Scooby and Shaggy are content while Velma and Daphne are bored but alright, and Fred can barely take it. It's a very novel concept, and the movie does do, honestly, very little with it, but I enjoyed the brief downtime we got. Scooby and Shaggy are really good here as they help out a lot, and then there's Velma. She finally got out of her stuffy know-it-all phase, and is really gay in this one. I did get a bit tired at a certain point where her entire personality became homosexual, and she just kind of stumbled over herself to a tiringly overplayed degree, but after almost 2 decades of trying to get her sexuality into a piece of media, I'm just happy they got to do it. And then there's Daphne, and this is where my problems with the movie actually come in. This, once again, plays into the Daphne is useless and let's fix that mentality, something that's been ongoing for decades by this point and is way overplayed. But given the sheer inundation of references to older monsters, I know why. This was made during nostalgia culture, wasn't it? They wanted to target their audience of people who watched the early cartoons as kids and don't know anything about modern Scooby-Doo, so they call out Daphne's uselessness. Then at the end, she spontaneously becomes leader of the gang for no reason. She has a fit and Fred spends 30 seconds praising her in a way that feels like just the writers trying to convince you they're not sexist anymore, instead of an actual attempt to not be sexist. At the very least, Fred wasn't butchered to the point of mockery for the sake of it, but that also meant that I didn't see anything in the movie that suggested Daphne would make a better leader. He's literally the one that brings everyone together for multiple things. Her suggesting good ideas doesn't make her a leader, it makes her part of the team. I wish they nailed Daphne better in this one. Then there's Coco Diablo. On one hand, a very well animated character whose equal role as Velma's gay awakening and the team's arch rival is rife with storytelling potential. Except they then have everyone go on about how great she is, she gets really easily forgiven for all she did, which, mind you, is making every single monster in the franchise ever, and I also think that kind of limits the scope of the series. It also directly contradicts everything. I don't like the idea that every monster ever was made by one person. The concept not only sucks, but it sets her up as the greatest criminal mastermind ever, only for her to get beaten immediately at the start of the film. I want to like her more than I do, and it's a shame because I think she balances out to just okay. Luckily, the actual villain, might not be a great character, but there's a very charming motivation for the main villain, and the evil phantom version of the Scooby Gang makes for very fun antagonistic squads. Squads? There's only one of them. The library chase is genuinely great and super funny. I think it all balances out to make what I call, honestly, a pretty good Scooby-Doo film. Maybe not an outright banger, I think it's on the cusp of greatness. It just needed to sort out its shit with Daphne, and maybe write Coco Diablo a bit better. There's also the ending where the gang dress up as old monsters to scare the people who used to use them. That could have been expanded more and be more interesting. Ironically, making it so short makes it feel more like nostalgia pandering than otherwise, but I thought it was a really novel idea. I love this animation style though, I think it's an improvement on several of the previous films. This looks great. I think this movie is just shy of the top 10. It is genuinely a great movie. I just wish it sorted out some of its shit better.
Because I come from the land of plenty.
Australia moment, holy shit, Australia moment! Did that bias shoot Legend of the Vampire up here? Yeah, I can't help it, it was cool to see my country in one of these films. And the film itself is good. It brings back the Hex Girls, which is a pleasant surprise. It bases itself around the very big rock and rock music, two things that are indeed quintessentially Australian. The mystery is fine. I can suspend my disbelief on a lot of things, but, the giant weather-manipulating 3D hologram made by a lens having light blasted through it is a bit hard to swallow. The reveal as to who the culprits were was not particularly surprising, in part for the fact that the Hex Girls coming back left the cast as mostly just them, the gang, the Aboriginals, and the obvious red herring and other suspects. There was really, only a handful that it could have been, and yeah, it was all of them. The final musical number is fine. Though if we were to compare it to the Hex Girls' last outing, the Scooby Gang may as well have just screamed a slur into the mic for how far off they were from that level. I do appreciate the Aboriginals didn't get hit with the same stereotypes that Native Americans or Africans tend to. That is that while still spiritual, they are portrayed as able to live along with technology, they know what a technology is, they are able to talk to people without everything being about their ancestors and spirits. The Aboriginals in this movie are human beings, and that's all I ask for. Also in this movie, Fred decides on a whim to form a rock band as the best way to solve the mystery. I think it's really funny to imagine that Fred didn't actually think this was that good of an idea, because they could have also just watched the Hex Girls as they did their thing to make sure that the Hex Girls didn't get kidnapped. And the real reason he decided to form this band was just for the fun of it. I mean, he literally got piercings out for it, and I'm certain he didn't have the holes just there waiting for earrings. Fred coming up with the idea for Velma to go into Aboriginal face is a bit cringe though. I do like him having an autistic hyperfixation on coming up with plans, but that was a bit, off. It is definitely a bit confusing that it follows on directly from Witch's Ghost in terms of having the Hex Girls, but the cast seem to be young again. I guess it could still be the adult gang, but they're wearing their old clothes due to the art style. Speaking of which, for some reason, I just can't stop noticing the backgrounds on this one. Sometimes they're really simple, and while that's not too different to the others, what is this Sydney Opera House? I mean, the Hex Girls almost certainly got hit the worst in the new art style, though. They're still great, but the sheer aura they had is lost. I'm glad they're here, though, given Music of the Vampire decided not to have them. That said, I just think this is a fun movie, and when it comes to fun Scooby-Doo movies, having the Australia card, I mean, what am I supposed to say? I'm Australian, I like Australia, I'm happy to see it here. It is a bit of a shame that of all our awesome monsters, the only one they chose was made up. It looks cool, it's just not a thing we have.
Now that you're under our spell.
Earth, wind, fire, and air! The music for Witch's Ghost, or specifically that song, is really good. This is the Hex Girls film, they're fun, cool, I like them. I will say, aside from that, I don't hold as much of this movie to high esteem as some might. I think the characters are fun as usual, and I do like how generally helpful Shaggy and Scooby are in this movie. Like, Shaggy is the one that goes the most places of his own accord, so he's most likely to encounter a monster first, which works, and they rely on his testimony. Scooby similarly has plenty to do. However, the movie also runs on the twist that Tim Curry is the bad guy, about as shocking a twist as Gerard Butler dies or Chris Hemsworth goes shirtless. The other twist is that the witch hunters are objectively in the right because their prejudice put away a world-destroying witch. Okay. Now, I do like that there's multiple normal mysteries in the film, and while I did suspect the initial twist, I was surprised the entire town was in on it. That was a good one, and I do like the message of how capitalizing on the suffering of someone's ancestry to make money off tourism by slandering their name is a bad thing. But again, they're absolutely correct to slander her name. She was evil. This movie would work much better thematically if she was a kind witch who meant no wrong, and Tim Curry got to continue being the main threat by stealing Ravencroft's powers. Now, not to say Sarah Ravencroft sucks as a villain, she just only shows up at the end and that's it. She's not really that memorable, and a bit of a one-note character who probably should have done more than fuck around for 5 minutes and then immediately lose. But what really, really works this movie, the reason it's up here, is the atmosphere. I think only one other movie on this ranking can match it, and that's not coming up for a little bit. This movie feels like a Scooby Gang movie where they are more grown up. It's darker, but not to the point of too dark, and this atmosphere really helps elevate it over pretty much any other Scooby film that I don't actively prefer the writing to. This does feel more, just a lot more overall. I feel like sometimes Scooby-Doo can really struggle to get across the horror parts, but this is one of the best movies at actually conveying it. It has this gorgeous look only shared by 2 other films, honestly really just one other, and like the Hex Girls especially get a lot from how they're animated. Witch's Ghost has an impeccable, untouchable vibe. It feels different to almost any other Scooby-Doo movie in a good way. Even when the story is falling behind and the big reveal falls flat for me, it comes across as something special. And you know, while I can talk shit about Sarah Ravencroft, she does have a lot of presence when she appears. I love the performance and the animation used to convey how evil she is, and her initial dialogue with Tim Curry is actually really fun. I think this movie is definitely solid, hard carried by how likable the Hex Girls are, the great music, and the fact that the Scooby Gang are usually fun to watch. It just bothers me they have this whole story about, oh man, those witch hunters, they sure were bad, they blamed the Wicca for being evil and stuff when they really weren't. And then the reveal is, no, Sarah really was evil, and if they weren't prejudiced against witches and hunting them, the world would have been destroyed by Sarah. I don't like that. I'm sorry I don't see the same qualities that a lot of others do. I think this is still a very solid movie though. I just think it really hits sometimes, and god, it looks so nice.
This is Autonomous Ultra Instinct!
We're here guys, it's Legend of the Phantosaur, the movie known for that one scene. Let's ignore that though and talk about why I actually do really like this film. Legend of the Phantosaur does a lot to break away from the norm. It gives Shaggy a lot more to do with his hypnotism and furthermore his learning to overcome his fear. Learning to overcome his fear isn't the most original Shaggy storyline, but this was one of the early ones to do it in the films. Velma starts dating a guy, which isn't the most creative, but it's a nice enough change of pace. I mean, it is an actually developed relationship, and this in turn means that Fred and Daphne get to have a big focus in the actual mystery solving, instead of the writers falling back on the old trend of just Velma does all the work. The characters all get to show their friendship here, with how much making sure Shaggy is okay matters to them. I like that a lot. The biker storyline is really silly but also pretty funny, but maybe most importantly, I found this movie very funny. Something about the slapstick, the wittiness, the wordplay really worked for me. It made this a stupidly fun film. I was laughing a lot. It was consistently fun, though I did find the mystery itself a bit lacking. The titular Phantosaur appears plenty and I like some of the reveals, but it also felt like it always took a back seat. And I don't think that's a direct result of the movie's various focuses, because one of them, Fred and Daphne trying to solve a mystery without Velma, could have easily been used to spruce things up. Instead, it just doesn't feel that major. And like, I do like some parts of it. As usual, multiple mysteries in one is cool. I like how 2 of them are directly related but not actually connected. One is just piggybacking off the other. And the culprits for the second one, while super obvious to the point of not even trying to hide it, make up for it by having interesting and developed motivations and in no way being malicious. They're honestly not too different to Velma when she made her own mystery and what motivated her, which probably unintentionally lines up with one of the culprits being really similar to her. So I do think on its own this is a really good film. And of course the Ultra Instinct Shaggy scene is goated. I thought I'd roll my eyes because I'm tired of the meme itself by now, but the scene actually is genuinely really cool, and it helps establish Shaggy's arc of coming to understand that the bravery inside of him is always there, just hidden through the fear. Also, that ending where everyone is hypnotized into Shaggy is fucking hilarious. Yeah, I like Legend of the Phantosaur, sue me, it's not just the meme scene. But that's a good scene too.
George Ribble.
Is there some bias for the Welsh in this one? Maybe a little. I know a few cool people from Wales. I generally enjoyed Scooby-Doo and the Loch Ness Monster. It might just be that I found the exaggerated Biff Weedian accents really funny, or that I actually enjoyed a decent amount of the jokes. Even some of the groaners aren't too bad, and the really obvious setup of "at least it isn't raining" does at least get followed up with the best animated sequence in the movie, with the chase set to a cheap rock song. Unfortunately, most of the movie has a pretty ugly 3D Nessie, but I do appreciate the twist. It's not the strongest, in fact I think the culprit herself is blindingly obvious, but the method with the multiple Nessies I think was cool, and I do like the 2 assisting culprits that were just motivated by, "Hey McGregor, this would be a funny prank to pull, or by the bagpipes of Uncle Angus the Haggis." I do wish though that Daphne's ancestry in Scotland was explored more. They just kinda left it to dry a bit. It's not enough for me to dislike the film. I mean, I like the setting and the animation's nice. The chases and comedy are all good. I just feel like Daphne could have been more expanded upon. Most of her stories in this ranking revolve around, but what if Daphne was useless because she was a damsel in the original show, but then she became cool? So I would have appreciated something that goes into a familial history. They even joke about the Blakes being danger prone. I think that's funny at least. I also like this really feels like a Loch Ness movie. That is to say, unlike some other times Scooby-Doo brings in a cryptid from real life as its villain, like the fucking Chupacabra or the Yeti, this actually has a reason to be chosen. You can believe the long-standing issues between these two people with differing views on the monster, because we as viewers have context from real life as to how massive the phenomenon of a cryptid can impact people. It might go a bit far, but I like how it works that into the story. It makes the story more believable. Yeah, Nessie's a big deal, she warrants an entire movie to her, instead of being relegated to some monster in some episode of some show. And the ending reveal of a real Nessie, barely seen on camera, is pretty fun as well, and allows some magic to continue to exist within the Scooby-Doo franchise. I can't say I felt the villain and Red Herring were amazing, but I like how they went about the ending. It is a really good movie, I like it a lot. Yeah. Scooby-Doo and the Alien Invaders is a bit of a slow film. It doesn't have the craziest mystery and not all the characters interest me. That is aside from Crystal and Amber, who really make this movie shine by giving Shaggy and Scooby some actual development. They proper fall in love in this film, and while it's far from the most engaging romance put to film, it was nice to see some depth brought to the characters. They even fight off the bad guys for them. That's pretty cool. And I like the two of them being alien not stopping them from caring for one another. Not to say I was crying when they split up, but I felt bad that they had to part ways. That's also about the main thing putting the movie up here. I really liked that whole part of the story, and I thought it was really well handled. The movie otherwise once again tries the real monsters aren't the villains bit, which, okay, it was relatively fresh, and sadly after this there wouldn't be too many real monsters in these films. I also like this fucking crazy dude who thinks he was anally probed, and just lets the gang hang out at his place because there's no hotels around. He's charming and I appreciate him. I hope he manages a good career with his art skills. As mentioned though, it's a rather slow film. Most of it is just Shaggy's romance with Crystal, and I don't mind that. It's fun to see him in a new situation like this. The rest of the gang don't get as much focus, but I don't actually mind it here. This doesn't feel like a Scooby-Doo movie where they're out of focus, it just feels like a Scooby-Doo movie that focuses on Shaggy and Scooby because it has a story to tell about Shaggy and Scooby. That might seem a bit weird worded like that, but usually when I feel like Velma, but especially Daphne and Fred, get left in the background, it's because most scenes of the movie are Shaggy and Scooby doing goofy shit. Here, it's not they're out of focus because every focus is on Shaggy, Scooby goofiness, it's they're not as in focus because the focus is on fleshing out Shaggy and Scooby. Also, I think Shaggy getting a girlfriend who happens to be an alien basing her identity off of people from the 60s is really funny. It's a good bit and a fun way to give her a character. It is a bit of a shame this movie began the backtracking from stuff the first two proper Scooby-Doo movies tried to do. After this one, there was no more adult Scooby Gang, they were back to being kids. And even with the real aliens, the villains were just three people trying to keep people away from the special thingy. It's not the most exciting twist, and it did bring the movie a little bit down. But considering the state of Shaggy's storylines in these films and how often they're content to just do nothing with him, I give this movie a lot of points for actually developing something. I mean, the only other time I can think of where Shaggy's romance is a main focus, it wasn't very good. I do wish Crystal and Amber got to return at some point, maybe in one of the shows they did. Who knows? Probably an actual Scooby-Doo aficionado. I've not fully watched most of the shows, but I really like this one. I thought it was quite good.
You are such a terrific dumbass.
Wait, am I bugging? Why is a crossover movie like Scooby-Doo and Batman Brave and the Bold up here? Because it's fucking awesome, methinks? This is maybe the only crossover like this to truly be good at both sides. It's a good Batman movie, focusing on his weaknesses and having him held back by his own personal connections and emotional issues with his failings. The other DC characters aren't important, but Aquaman is an absolute delight, Jeffrey Combs is always great to see, especially as the Question, the Martian Manhunter gets to play into his love of cookies to give him a dynamic with Scooby, it's really fun. And the Scooby Gang may not get to solve the whole mystery, but the work they do, and importantly the way their tenacity and friendship influences Batman, makes them feel important. And yeah, they even figure out Clayface's role. They get to wear Bat Family costumes, which is really fucking cool as a way to get the crossover aspect in. I love a lot of the jokes. I love how Batman being a detective naturally helps to make the crossover feel right for both sides. I love the animation that does try to blend the look of this era Scooby-Doo with Brave and the Bold. They don't exactly look like they quite match one another, but they look like you could believe them being in the same room. The mystery is solid, but mostly for how it connects to Batman's own arc and his hang-ups, and that ending makes me smile. I love the way Batman uses the meddling kids line to reassure the gang, being like, hey, I never would have solved this if it weren't for some meddling kids who pushed me. It was really cool to see them focus on Batman as a character. He's not there to be advertised and propped up. likely because his show was dead at this point. They went out of their way to expand on him with an arc about regretting a life he couldn't save and shutting himself away from it. In fact, I like how the Mystery Gang contrasts his existing group of detective friends. Yes, they are all friends, but they don't have the same camaraderie and trust that Mystery Inc. had developed as the closest of allies. So they actually talk to Batman, they try to get to know him and get him to open up. In doing so, they are the ones that convince him to go back to his failures and try to correct them, instead of trying to pretend they don't exist. It's a great thing, and I like when Batman stories get to expand on his brooding loner thing as not some awesome badass thing he does, but something that his friends are there to help him out of and be more of a person. Plus, it plays off of how Batman has already met Mystery Inc. in the past, and the start with the fake mystery that Batman sets up to test them is a really fun inclusion that jumpstarts the plot quickly. Usually, the opening mystery is either completely superfluous to the movie, or just there to set up a villain for later. Here, it's actually absolutely integral to the plot. The Batman on the run with his friends sort of element of the story also reminds me of Batman Superman Public Enemy, and I love that movie. One of my favorite DC animated films. Hey, let me know if you want me to rank all of those, I'd love to. I guess my issues would be like, Plastic Man, stop hitting on the teenager, but also his whole being a former crook thing is brought up in one scene, as if it'll be a big deal, but it didn't feel like much of one. It would have been neat to see how that impacts his friendship with, say, Shaggy, who is deathly afraid of all the criminals in the franchise. And the other detectives, namely Black Canary, Mansion Mars Hunter, and Detective Pimp, just don't feel like they played that major a role. But hey, this is a Scooby Gang crossing over with Batman movie. That is the whole point. That part was nailed, and I have no complaints. I think this is a really damn good movie, and as a fan of both, I was quite pleased. It is definitely my favorite Scooby-Doo crossover movie, but not quite my favorite Scooby-Doo film. Okay, Cyberchase is just really fun. For a trapped in video game story, I don't remember there being a lot of the general cliches like, oh, levels of randomly different genres, or here's the cheat codes moment. Instead, it's just fun running around finding Scooby snacks, and I can believe this being a game, at least in concept. It has a simple goal in each level, the variety is in the settings for each level instead of like, you know, one of those like trapped in a video game stories where this level's a platformer, this level's a fucking fighting game, this level's this and that. This seems like it understands how video games work. The ending, especially with the Cyber Gang, is very fun, and the callbacks to all the past were pretty cool too. I also kinda like the Phantom Virus. On one hand, he was definitely fun for how delightfully douchey he is, though admittedly, on the other hand, being the first main villain in one of these films to get utterly humiliated in combat by fucking Shaggy and Scooby did make it hard to treat him like a threat for the entire hour of movie that followed. This is where I have to go on my issues a bit. The film was about a 9-level game, but level 9 is the entire second half of the film. A montage covers a majority of the levels really quickly, and that second half is a lot of the same old running around from the fan service returning monsters. The Phantom Virus didn't really feel as important as he should have, because the real main villain was the guy Bill, the only suspect that could have been, and absolutely would have been a super obvious twist if I had remembered that Bill existed. As a result, the ending of the movie can drag a bit. There's no real mystery worth spending time on, but I enjoyed a lot of the comedy, especially with the gang meeting themselves and getting around the issue of like, how do we deal with Shaggy and Scooby, because they have not had updated looks in this era Scooby-Doo. What if they met the red outfit versions? I thought that was actually really clever. What does ultimately tip the scales into bringing the movie down for me though is the lack of atmosphere. There's no soft horror or even moderate spooky vibes. It's often very bright and more into sci-fi than spookiness, and that makes it lose a bit of identity relative to the other films on the list. It is so fun though. It has a lot of variety in the set pieces, which can't be said for too many other films, and like again, the double Scooby Gang is really fun. The movie is solid, I think it's really cool, and I don't mind them bringing back all these old monsters, because I think it earned the fan service after making a whole movie that's just really enjoyable. If this had more of that spooky vibe to it somehow, it might have ranked a little higher.
Zippity-doo-dah, zippity-day, your mother has the super gay!
Abracadabra-Doo is most striking for how it evolved the art style from the previous movies, introducing what I would consider maybe one of my favourite Scooby-Doo styles, for retaining that original simplistic charm, but having heavier shading to help play into the spookiness of the kids' horror. But even beyond the looks of the film, I just really liked it. The story is very solid, but I think I mostly appreciated the tone, pacing, and character in it. The movie takes itself seriously, but never too seriously. The characters all treat this as a serious concern, with minimal moments of them breaking the tension in a way that makes the world feel less real. The film includes plenty of scenes that only exist to help convey this. There are moments of the characters simply talking about the mystery or preparing to go on trips, and all of these are interwoven with just scenes dedicated to character. There's like one scene with just Daphne and Velma, and a few with Daphne and Fred, that feel like way more than any of those characters got in several of the films that released before this one. This feels like the point where they went back to being characters, instead of being the obligatory inclusions in a Shaggy Scooby story. And hell, I like their role too. Shaggy's bravery is once more an overarching element of the story. I do kinda wish he got to have more differences in the way his stories were told, but I tend to find that the way they focus on his bravery and courage and how it grows is varied enough and does always make for generally a very solid storyline. This movie shows all facets of it, from him being a coward usually, needing to be convinced to enter dangerous situations, but being genuinely courageous when faced with scenarios where his friends are in danger. That's my go right there. That's like my favorite depiction of Shaggy. Cowardly, can be bribed into situations, but when someone he cares about is genuinely in danger, he just jumps in without thinking and immediately tries to help. That is Shaggy to me. The characters just made for this movie are all quite fun. I like the magic teachers, and while the culprit I figured out pretty quickly, I did like how they went about explaining his actions, and I feel like this is one of the least annoying cases of the culprit being easily forgiven by everyone. He was genuinely remorseful and understandably motivated, and while he scared some kids, he never went out of his way to try and injure them. At one point he even tries to help when he accidentally puts someone in genuine danger. There's also this consistent theme of love in the movie. Daphne thinks Fred has the hots for magician lady, but it's not really a love triangle as much as just a small thing that gets her a bit. But at the end, they clear things up and it's nice. I think this is one of the best showings of their relationship. Velma's sister Madeline is introduced and she has a crush on Shaggy, which he doesn't reciprocate, but it does make his major role a lot more understandable as it is character motivated. And the secondary villain is also motivated by love, and hey, he gets it in the end. I thought it was a neat little thing that they didn't go overboard into being the focus of the movie, or being unrealistically tropey. It's just something that helped tie the movie together. I think if anything was to get in the way of this movie, it would be that Madeline's relationship with Velma isn't all that prominent, which even some films below that introduce relatives of, say, Daphne and Fred didn't necessarily stumble into. I think that their sisterhood could have been stronger. Otherwise, I didn't take much issue with this film. I think it's a very solid little mystery movie with likable characters, fantastic animation, and a great usage of the Scooby-Doo cast. Seriously, everyone contributes to this mystery solving and are as likable as ever. I really do like this one.
I'm the queen of the Nile, so just bow down to me.
You know, Where's My Mummy has a name that reminds me a lot of a very good friend of mine. Anyway, I really like this movie. Up to this point in the movies I'd watched, only a few managed to convey the gang as friends, instead of just two groups of friends that work together, because Scooby and Shaggy rarely interacted with anyone other than each other in any meaningful way. But this movie actively makes a deal out of their friendship with especially Velma, but also Fred and Daphne to a degree. It's a very fun movie, taking place in a generally small area, mostly. I am quite fond of the Egyptian setting, and AAA was a really likable character. The split storyline between the Pharaoh's tomb and the Goobers trying their best impression of Road to El Dorado was really well handled, and the major villain, Amelia von Butch, was a pretty entertaining character, considering she didn't have any major gimmicks like one is used to. It is definitely refreshing to have an antagonist that isn't acting like a dumb monster for most of her screen time. Von Butch is maybe a bit on the nose as a name, but she's a very effective and unique villain that kind of amounts to an evil German Lara Croft. But what really makes this movie to me, more than any of that or the good animation or the fun chase sequences, is the reveal. Velma was absent for a while before the movie, and the setup is that the gang is going to surprise her, and yet the movie makes the reveal that Velma herself was the monster, making a hoax of her own using all of her experience from previous hoaxes to scare away actual Tomb Raiders from desecrating the newly found crypt. It's a great reveal that makes a lot of sense and is quite unique. I can think of only one other film that does this, and that's Curse of the Lake Monster, and that does it like shit, so it doesn't count. The design of Cleopatra's ghost is solid, and I'd love to see this movie in the style of Witch's Ghost on the top spot. I mean, I think that would be really cool. Anyway, I genuinely didn't see the twist coming, and I thought it was really well done. Bonus points in general for the movie allowing Scooby and Shaggy to solve a mystery of their own in a way that makes sense and fits their characters. It's a bit of a side trip, but I'm a big fan of this little expedition, and how Shaggy does piece everything together without help. Rarely do these movies acknowledge that he's not actually an idiot, he's just easily scared and doesn't tend to think too hard, as well as being way too hungry. Shaggy is still a mystery solver, and a lot of the time, he happily pipes in with people he suspects or ideas in the case, but this one actually takes it all the way and lets him really do something. He isn't overly intelligent either, to the point of being out of character. He just puts the pieces together once they're laid out for him. He manages to take out his enemy as well just by being really good at running away and leading it into water. I love this little bit. It's no exaggeration to say that Where's My Mummy genuinely shocked me by being a really fun time with multiple solid plot lines, really fun original characters both heroic and villainous, and a great twist and solid usage of the main cast. This easily sits as one of my favorite Scooby-Doo films. Unfortunately for Where's My Mummy, it was never even in the competition. In fact, I hate to say it, but there was no competition because... I mean, banger, straight banger. Both Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island the movie And the theme song. I mean, Terror Time Again is an unadulterated all-timer. Fucking great song. It fits the movie well. Zombie Island was the first real attempt at a Scooby-Doo film, not just a TV movie thing. And it's just great. It's so good, the first live-action film would attempt to grift off of its general setup of the team breaking up, and then, the other half of Zombie Island would be grifted on by Paranorman. They seriously have the exact same plot twist, and whatever Paranorman didn't take from Zombie Island, it kind of took from Witch's Ghost. And what a twist it is this movie has. This film does a great job at making you think you know what's up. It knows you're going to be saying, well, obviously Bo is the red herring, and then it hits you with the reveal of the zombies are real. This sets you up to think that the main twist has happened, and then it has the twist villain reveal that later recontextualizes everything again. The zombies were warning everyone to leave because of the real monsters, and they do stuff that actually sometimes helps too. Though it is also reasonable that their thought process is that if they can kill our heroes, well, that will also take out the main villain's plans too. So the twist doesn't make you wonder why they acted so threateningly, it makes sense that they did what they did. I love the main crew here. Shaggy and Scooby are obviously mostly gluttonous scaredy cats, but it ends up having real plot relevance. It makes the villains assume they're not that useful or helpful, but they really prove that they're part of the crew as much as anyone. Fred, Daphne, and Velma get to be their usual fun selves. I like how their friendship as a squad can be felt just from how naturally they jump back into things after spending a long time apart living separate lives. It also helps that the horror is genuinely well done here, but so is the comedy. It has great gags, but also effective moments of terror that, especially for a young child, would stand out really well and make this a movie that sticks. Of course, aided by some of the most gorgeous animation, arguably the best looking film on this list. And I'm a big fan of the design for Fred in this film, and I just think this looks good. This is just all around a very solid movie. The only thing I'm not particularly sold on is the cat god part of the big reveal. It kind of comes out of nowhere, but that's a small blemish. I mentioned way back at the start of this ranking that I love what this movie ultimately represents. It doesn't go back to these characters because you should go back to your childhood and relive it. Wasn't that a better time in your life? This movie is a point where the crew finally grew up like their fans. It's there to say that it's okay to look back on and cherish your childhood and the dreams you once had as you make sure to not stop growing up. Your childhood is there to comfort you. You don't have to go back to your childhood. Your childhood is with you. It's moving along with you. It's growing up with you. The gang have grown up. The gang aren't kids anymore. They come out of this movie different people than they went in. Fred and Daphne realize the path they should take. Velma opens her eyes to what new there is. Shaggy and Scooby realize that not all monsters are people in suits. They become a new, better Mystery Incorporated, no longer investigating just silly mysteries, but real monsters and real issues. They're grown up enough to be ready to face the bigger threats out there. It's there to say that just because you enjoy something as a child doesn't mean that can't be enjoyed as an adult. There are things in your hobbies and what you love as a kid that you can only tackle once you mature enough to tackle them. That is what it's saying. Zombie Island is in many ways the antithesis to modern day nostalgia culture. Not about bringing you back to your childhood, but bringing your childhood back to you. An ideal maturation of a silly childhood show that doesn't try to make it gritty or edgy and dark in some kind of stupid how children see maturity way. No, this is a genuinely mature update to the franchise that knows that real maturity is knowing when it's okay to be a bit childish. What a fantastic movie, and my favorite entry in the entire Scooby-Doo franchise. An absolute banger. But the Confederate zombies kind of deserved it. I mean, fuck them. And that is my Scooby-Doo ranking. I did not write a conclusion to this one. I did not write an ending. So, yeah, let me know your thoughts on the Scooby-Doo franchise. I hope you enjoyed. Everyone wish Larrywinwood a happy birthday. I hope you enjoyed this. I am so glad that this is absolutely his favorite franchise of all time. It was definitely a blast going through these films. I really enjoyed, I liked a majority of them, and even some of the ones I didn't necessarily like, I still thought were decent usually. This ranking had a pretty small amount of actively bad movies, and its top 10 are all, I consider, great films. But, yeah, let's not leave you any longer. This has been, an hour and a half long video, so maybe a little bit more. I don't know how much I ramble. But, yeah, take care, friends. See you next time. Happy birthday, Larry, yeah. Yeah, so, that was that. I hope everyone enjoyed it. That was definitely one of the longer movie rankings I've had to do. I mean, I say that, it really wasn't any longer to watch through than like Barbie or, God forbid, the comic book movie one, the live action comic book movie one. Oh goodness. But yeah, that was a lot of work, but I'm honestly really happy with how this came out. I found a lot of movies that I really liked, and I really like these films. I really like Scooby-Doo, I think. And at some point I'm gonna go actually properly watch through every show front to back instead of doing what I've done and like watch sporadically a handful of episodes per show, except 13 Ghosts. But yeah, I've had a great time making this, and now it's time to end it. Thank you to everyone who's going by my Patreon. You legends, absolutely. You always help out. You might have noticed that I did not bug any of you to give me things for the end card for this one, even though this one went on Patreon, because I figured no one would really guess that it was for a birthday thing, given it's just such a common, like, thing. A common thing. It's a thing that you can see me doing normally, unlike Bigfoot, which is very specific to a certain joke. But that's because Bivid has gathered me a bunch of quotes to do from his friend group. And he's given me a fucking novella of just his own. Okay. What is this garbage game? If you want to be in the kitchen so bad, you can wash the dishes. Sorry guys, you won't get the goated blurry image of Animal lifting up a star in the analysis, which is a fucking stage prop, by the way. Oh, but what if the imposter comes back as a ghost and tries to mess with the Fall Guy? Proton pack, suckers! And fully functional, too. Go fuck a Fall Guy. Don't be shy, go ahead and turn this fight into a musical. What sort of self-respecting Tom and Jerry fan would I be if I didn't bring up what could possibly be Tom's most iconic tool to date, the velocity-enhancing, speed-altering Ultra Zapper? Oh, I know all the Tom and Jerry fans have been waiting for me to bring up this bad boy. That's not quite the quote, but I'm not doing that again. Oh, it's okay, Larry. They could just have Monokuma fight Chorus Sensei and Junko fight Springtrap. That's not how it works. Because you can say, my hope is really peaking for this matchup. Get it? Hope's peaking, like Hope's Peak Academy. Hope's Peak! If he wasn't actually, now that I'm reading that, I don't want to say that. I just like this whole interaction. Like, I know the quote is, "Ooh, you're mad, aren't you?" But like, just he was like fully ready to explain that in like, I mean, it took him 5 minutes, so I guess he could have gone and double-checked himself, so it wasn't off the top, but, you know. Happy birthday, Larry. I hope you had a wonderful rest of your day. Psych! Just kidding, you cringeite! The Industrial Revolution and its consequences have been a disaster for the human race. What is that supposed to mean? What is the relationship that has with anything ever? What is this argument? But Max, if they kill Timmy, he'll just come back as a fairy. Then they'll have to deal with the power of 3 fairies. Shut the fuck up and never talk again. I don't listen to English women. I just refuse to acknowledge them. I had to take a moment to figure out what that last one even was. No, I get where you're coming from. Yeah, I am Nemesis, but it just doesn't sound right, you know? What is Take Me to the Church? Oh, sorry, Take Me to Church. I don't know what that is. And I just do not remember the tune of Bye Bye. Oh, fuck. I'm like genuinely trying to... No, it's just gone. I haven't, no. I'm sorry, that one I just genuinely is not in my head. Yeah, I mean, the Minecraft Terraria rap battle. Wait, no, I don't know this one. My mind was thinking of, Minecraft versus Lego. When thinking of Minecraft rap battle, but I do not know this one. Thanks, Don. What a helpful one. How am I supposed to figure what to say here? Oh, fuck's sake. There he was. Larrywinwood was begrudgingly animating Eric Cartman winning his well-earned death battle against Porky Minch. He pondered if he could get away with swapping the results without anyone noticing, when he heard the sound of something coming in at a great time through his Larrywinwooden walls in his evil Larry. What do you happen to be, Larry? The voice sounded familiar to the animator of Among Us vs. Fall Guys. He turned around and noticed a stylish green warp pipe from Super Mario Bros. Had crashed into his room. Within the shadows of the pipe, a group of figures approached him. Luigi, Hulk, Shaggy and Kermit, even Shiny Espeon? What are you doing here? There's a war across the high complex multiverse, and we are needing your help. Although I can't help but notice you don't have green hair. Are you really who we're looking for? Luckily, Mr. Winwood was able to prove his identity instantly by strutting in his iconic seafoam green pants. Into the start for legends! The leader of the grubby green goons extended his hand to Laryl, who accepted the invitation without skipping a frame rate. How does that make any sense? Without skipping a frame rate? They had formed the Dream Team, and this is a war they couldn't afford to Larry Losewood. Larry Losewood. That one I like. Oh, hey! Hey, man, how you doing? You remember me, right? We talked once. Happy birthday, Larry. Being Larry's friend was the easiest win of my life. Then I call him Larry Winwood for nothing. He says this all the time when I talk about the shit I gotta do. It could be the most time-consuming bullshit from Death Battle, and he just say, easiest win of your life, followed by, and I don't say that often, and they don't call you Luis Cruz for nothing. Hope it's Cruz and not Cruz. I've never asked. And it always makes me laugh. He's an amazing friend and is always a blast to hang out with, and I wish him nothing but the best. That is completely true. He is an amazing friend, and he is a really great guy. Yeah. What the fuck? Larry! Happy birthday, my friend. Aside from 100 Gooby Bucks and the crustiest Gooby Pop I have, I can only offer my appreciation of you as my friend and the actual creator of Fall Guys. I hope your day is great, and that this is the year we finally learn how many sides an octagon has. I'm thinking like 6 or some number. That's a Danganronpa reference. That's, I fucking know that one. That's the bit in Super Danganronpa 2 Chapter 4, where he's like, an octagon is a shape with 8 sides, right? I also request it is a custom with a lovely, not obnoxious Geiger counter going off in the corner in the background of the reading. Well, Larry! Oh no, I don't like that. And I genuinely believe Larry could have had a normal day if it wasn't his freaking birthday, gosh darn it. As much as I try to tiptoe around this, everybody wants to celebrate a freaking birthday. I like how I just didn't ask what any of these are like based on. So like I'm just saying shit without knowing the inspiration. Just for him. This was the Barbie Shrimps It All was winner takes it all. The Barbie Shrimps It All. There you go, just for you. I just genuinely do not remember what Bye Bye's tune was. It's such a bad song, and I don't know what Take Me to Church is. That's enough. Alright, goodbye. Take care, everyone. Have a good one, and shit like that. Yeah. Fucking see ya. And everyone wish Laryl a happy birthday too.